Okay, this is episode 19 of Counterpoints, a CS:GO related talk. I don't know why I'm saying that like fucking okay, sponsored by Audible, like whatever. I don't know why I do it like a real podcast suddenly. Yeah, anyway, I'm Thorin. Why am I even doing that? It's my show. I made the show. It's on my channel even. How would they possibly find it without knowing who I? Fuck you if you don't know who I am. Or tune out now, motherfucker. I've already got your click anyway. There we go. That's everyone disrespected. Guest, usual co-host, Moses. Get to him in a moment. The guest is obviously YNK. And here's the problem. YNK, you made a mistake with your alias, right? Because it is an alias as in a gaming name. It's a good name, right? You know, people like to shorten the names down and make that. That's really good. But the problem is people actually do say out loud YNK, right? They don't realize it's Yanko. And so the problem is you're almost fucking up. I mean, I've done it before. I've even said like YNK, which doesn't really make sense, you know, since your name actually is Yanko. So you should have stuck with Yanko. So we've got Yanko here, yanking on that D, because I'm the D, and then got Moses here, also yanking on that D. Nothing to do with his name, it's just Moses. He's a regular co-host, as usual. So, let's start the show off, boys. The first topic I want to talk about, because I think we did touch on it a little bit last episode, but obviously we didn't have Yanko here, is that it officially happened that Sixer was added to Envious in favour of Devil. And there was a little bit of drama with it, by the way, because if you remember, the way Devil left the team actually, amazingly, seemed a bit bitter. Like, you would have thought, right, with him coming up, like, he essentially was, like, boosted into that level of the scene. No, he wouldn't have got there by himself, probably, but all the G2 players were taken, so they got Devil in instead of Kiyoshima, and then, obviously, it didn't work out. He must even know that himself, you know, and must know, like, you know, I wasn't playing well. So you'd think, when they parted ways, they could do it in a very, like, a civil manner, you know, like, oh, you know, we gave you a chance, like, sorry it didn't work out, like, obviously, you know, we have to try Sixer, he's a better player than you, and then the idea is he would go, like, you know, thanks for, like, the really great salary and all the world tournaments I got to play in, like, I'll try and will back. But instead, it was kind of acrimonious the way they split up, because there was that whole thing where Happy and Apex were like streaming, making fun of him, and then he was obviously like hurt by that. And then both sides did like these weird interviews where they revealed shit. Where like, I think, was it Happy or Kenny S just revealed that thing where they were like, oh yeah, Devil just didn't learn and like listen to what we were saying. And then Devil himself came out and was basically just like saying like, you know, they fought, like what we know already, like they forced me to all the bad roles, like they never gave me a chance to do what I want to do. So amazingly, like before we talk about the Sixer part, what do you think about that, Yanko? The fact that they removed Devil and kind of like that weird, like that's actually a pretty bad breakup in a way, you know?
I mean, I was honestly surprised when I saw them making the change, when I saw the rumor initially, because they did start playing better after, you know, the new season of Pro League started in August. They switched back to their old playing style and everything, the old roles, and they actually had some decent results. You could see improvement with them after a long time. Even individuals started playing better. So I was surprised by that. And also Sixer, I mean, you know this, he was, in 1.6, he was known as an AWPer. He was the primary AWPer for his teams like Millennium and so on. And you bring him in a team that already has Kenny S. So that's going to be interesting to see. And for all the bad blood, I don't know. I'm also like, why would you do something like that? I mean, there's no reason if you already part ways. Yes, okay, Devil, of course, he can be a bit salty and everything, but it's not like he was, you know, revealing any dirty secrets or something like that, you know?
What do you think, Moses?
I mean, yeah, he's the logical one to replace. I do think, to a certain degree, I think I would lean more towards Devil's side of the story than I would Envy's, I think.
Moses siding with the Devil? I think I've heard that before.
The pity about him leaving this team is it will not save him from Thorin-related roasting. He is still going to be a favorite target of yours for no fucking reason.
No reason. Definitely not that he's just shit at the game Counter-Strike, but paid one of the highest salaries in the world. That'll have nothing to do with it, I bet. Just a mean guy out there. Oh, again, you're like one of those fucking NiP fans, right? Why are you being mean, saying NiP is not number one in the world with 0 titles? That all they are getting is lots of money, and to be shit and have -30 at a LAN. Why can one guy be allowed to say this?
Devil Rose out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever other than to just destroy.
Okay, I will admit, the difference with the Dren and Devil and Smiths is that I will also roast them in a match where in a scenario where they're not playing in the match and it's actually totally unrelated to them. Yeah, and I'll just bring them up. And I imagine they might sometimes be sat at home like, why am I getting roasted? I'm not even at this fucking event. And I'm like, you see that guy with the up shot? Didn't know Smiths was playing. Like, fucking hell! It's like that isn't. I will admit that's a bit hardcore, but it is still just jokes, guys. Just harmless banter.
Still mates, of course.
Still all mates, yeah. They all hate me, by the way. But okay. Luckily, don't really care about being hated by shit players from France. So, any more comment on the situation? Like, what do you think about Sixer coming in, Moz? Like, I know you didn't follow the end of 1.6, you didn't really see the guy's career, but
Yeah.
What do you think about the concept of just adding a new player, basically, in that sense, I guess?
I mean, I don't think it changes much because, I mean, even still, Devil wasn't supposed to put up some massive amount of numbers. Sixers in that same situation where he's not going to be looked at to be the star player. They just want someone who's going to have impact. And that's why it was kind of a bummer for Devil, because by the end of his tenure in Envy, he was having an impact. He wasn't putting up great numbers by any stretch. He was putting up bad numbers. But overall, I don't think it changes anything. The real reason why Envy is no longer performing as badly as they were towards the middle and beginning of this year is because Kenny's getting back into form. We're seeing NBK even just this morning, as we record this, he's had some phenomenal games. So NBK is coming back into shape. We've seen Happy be much more effective in his role. So it's all the star players that needed to step up in the first place are actually now getting back into form. So that's the reason why Envy's doing better, and it doesn't really matter which fifth they have in that situation.
Do you have a theory, Yanko, as to why Envious has been shit for so long? Because the thing is, right, the form they're in now reminds me actually of when they just got Devil and they'd had that Dream at Malmo run where they went to the semi-finals and they'd beaten like Dignitas and they looked all right, you know. And the thing that I don't get is then they just like regressed completely, you know, and then had that like bad period and they had so many obviously the majors were shit. But what I don't get is it's not like they've changed that much, but now they're actually starting to look pretty legit. Like, here's the thought exercise, okay? Imagine if you could erase from your mind everything that you know of the past of Envious, okay, from before 2016. Imagine they were all brand new names to you, a brand new team of players. You'd actually be quite promising. You'd be like, oh, this is like a heroic Dignitas type scenario, you know, look at these guys like improve. Like this Apex guy's starting to get some consistency. This Kenny S guy's like maybe going to establish himself as a superstar. Like they've got a decent map pool now. The things would actually be pretty promising. The problem is, because they're still not close to the level of like winning a major, etc., it still feels to me like there's something missing, you know, that doesn't work.
I mean, in the case of Envious in particular, it's kind of impossible to do that because I think that's precisely the reason why they started like sucking so much in the beginning of this year. Because when you look at Envious and their play style in general, even back in LDLC days, doesn't matter. It was always like super aggressive, like finishing rounds early, running and gunning, getting like the trade kills. You could even hear it in like those videos and stuff when they huddle in LAN. It's like just get the trade kills, get the revenge kills. It always works on LAN. And for that, obviously, you have to be super on point individually. It's reliant a lot on your players getting the entry kills, players like Apex or Kenny S getting the kills with the AWP. And they realized towards the end of last year that they were getting like too one-dimensional. People started like figuring them out, and they couldn't keep winning that way. So they brought in Maniac as a coach. They switched the in-game leader. They started like broadening their game. They wanted to introduce like slower tactics, slower pace style, right? Because then they would be harder to read. But they were struggling with that style, obviously, because it was new to them. They started losing. Then they were like, okay, fuck this. Like, we don't want to lose. This is like shit. But they lost confidence. Players individually lost confidence, like Apex, Kenny. And that's a play style that's like reliant on confidence. If you're not confident if taking like any battle, no matter how silly it looks, and having confidence in yourself and in your teammate that he will get the trade kill, then that system completely falls apart. And I think that's what happened to Envy this year for the better part of it. They lost confidence, and that's simply for players like them and the style they played, that's detrimental.
What do you think? Okay, yeah, keep going, Moses.
I think we're seeing a lot of the old guard have to like lose confidence and have to reinvent their style. If you look at like look at Astralis is no longer on top. They were on top for a lot. Like all the old guard of like 2015. Envy has pretty much collapsed this year. VP had their own stretch, and now they've had to reinvent. The lineup changes of Fnatic and Godsent. These guys now have to reinvent how they want to play because that's not going to work anymore. NiP had to go through this period. So I think there's a lot of young talent that's now coming into the scene. I think it's in all these, like you see Dignitas rising up, see Heroic having good games. All these new teams that are coming up are actually forcing some of these older teams and older players who have been dominant for so long to really have to reinvent themselves as players, as teams. It's actually pretty cool time period in Counter-Strike right now, I think.
See, that makes it seem like if you then addressed like Astralis and you're like, oh, why are you guys always having to reinvent yourself? And then Device does that like fucking Bruce Banner out of the Avengers. He turns around. The secret is, I always lost confidence in myself. Like, brilliant. And scene.
Do you? I think it's because, I don't know if you guys agree. I think like the average skill level of individual players has really like increased, has risen in the past year or so, right? I feel there are that players like maybe Olofmeister, like the old Fnatic team, like the old Envious team, the gap between them and the teams that were, below them and individual players is not as big as it was the past year. I think that's one of the main reasons why their playstyle starts faltering, because there are more and more teams like, for example, Dignitas, or even perhaps a team like Heroic, who can now stand toe-to-toe with them on the server aim-wise, right? And that was their biggest advantage, because they would just destroy everyone with their aim and their individual playstyle and working off of each other. They never really had to have a plan B, have some strats or executes or stuff like that.
Well, I mean, one thing you can definitely say that's in line with that, okay, is if you just look at who the rising stars are this year, look at the people who have a potential to maybe be a superstar and at the moment are just becoming really solid fraggers. They're all new players, basically. It's people like Valde, fucking Magic Spoy, obviously. He only showed glimpses of that at the end of the year. Elijah's had a superstar performance. Let me think, who else have we got?
They're all young as well.
Config's finally actually getting some consistency. He was very spotty earlier in the year. I mean, there's a whole bunch of these people. Obviously, Simple's now gone out Supernova. He's actually gone to the full next step. So the point is, there's a whole load of new talent who's actually doing it legit on LAN. And then because of that, one thing I think everyone here could agree on is the tier 2 of Counter-Strike right now has never been this strong. You remember in the middle of this year when it was kind of a bit whack, part of the problem with SK dominating is that you were okay, SK is dominating, and then who the fuck is there? Fnatic, something was wrong with them because of Olofmeister. Na'Vi had Guardian was fucked up. Then you had G2's really spotty, and we already know they have to have a miracle day basically to win anyway. So you look down the roster and you were sort of tier 1's kind of a bit whack right now. What's funny is at the moment, tier 1 still hasn't really sorted itself out. We've got some stronger teams there, but tier 2 has gotten insanely strong. And now you have all these teams that, let's say, are 6th place in the world and down, who can all, with the right matchup, can get an upset. Obviously, they can't all do it. My point is, though, say you put, Dignitas against Na'Vi, I think they could win a game or win a series. If you put, Heroic against, I don't know, off the top of my head, G2 or something, they could win the series. If you got the right matchup, suddenly we're in a world where these tier 2 teams could win series. Whereas, the whole thing I've always made fun of Mouse and FaZe over is that they were, top tier 2 teams, but they never got those big wins, they were never actually going to do it. They always didn't live up to the potential, So what do you think about this? Because at the moment, I think that's what makes the scene super exciting for me at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is the first time also where we don't, on that point, we don't have a dominant, one team, there was NiP at the very beginning of CSGO, and then it was Fnatic, and then we had Envy had that stretch where they were the team to beat. Now it's SK, but even SK's reign as the number 1 team in the world isn't as dominant as Fnatic's was. They still have dropped a couple tournaments here and there. They just win the really, really big ones, and they're always competitive. There's no top favorite anymore. There's no Fnatic that everyone has to attain to. It's pretty cool. And yeah, the tier 2 teams now have the firepower to match up, and they're also the teams who have been trying to find ways to overcome that firepower deficiency, like Yanko said. So they have the tactics, and now they're a little bit more diverse as teams. It almost feels like. So yeah, the gap has closed between tier 1 and tier 2. We really only have those. VP, Na'Vi, and SK, I would say, are the 3 teams who are in kind of a little bit of their own pocket within that tier 1.
Okay, I've got a question on that topic then. This is for anyone, I'll throw it out there. Because one thing I think is interesting is, I actually agree with you. What's funny is, when Cologne happened, yeah, I called it the SK era and all that shit, and it clearly is, because it was so good. But the problem is, part of why I thought it was the SK era also is, I didn't really see a legit rival to them. Okay, VP could take them close, sure, but at the time, it looked the problem is that all the maps VP wants to play, SK's in theory better on, so they should win most best of 3s there. Yeah. Then you add in G2, couldn't even get far enough to play them. Fnatic never actually met them because they weren't good enough to get to the finals, etc. in all these tournaments. So you looked at the scene and you were yes, SK is amazing, they're an all-time great team, but also they're in a perfect storm of a weak, they're in a weak tier 1 basically, where now they should just dominate. The difference is now, I actually still, if I had to put my money down, I would put my money on them to win the most tournaments out of the next 6 months. Right? I would still pick them as the team.
SK?
But I wouldn't pick them to dominate though. What I think will happen is, I think they're going to be that team that is just they'll be like Fnatic in this sense. Fnatic used to always be top 4 no matter what. A bad day for Fnatic was losing the semis. They could have a reasonably okay tournament and still make the final. I think that's what SK is going to be like. I think the key thing for me with them is, when I saw Coldzera play fairly average Counter-Strike at New York, but them still almost make the final, I was this is a Na'Vi scenario when Guardian went to shit, the system is so good here that's going to make them super consistent. They've got the super deep map pool, they've got a great system, so if Cold Zero goes off, yeah, they will win the tournament. That should happen. But the difference is they're going to still make semis and finals. Like, I don't see people stopping this team. Like, they're going to get out all the group stages as far as I'm concerned. So that's the thing. I don't think they're going to dominate, but I still think they're going to be the number one team for a decent while now. I haven't seen anyone yet who really should take the crown from them,
Yeah, I think the only issue that SK has in terms of their number one ranking in the world is that they haven't been active in the circuit lately. I think that's.
Like, that's going to take care of itself, right? In weeks from now.
Yeah, now everything picks up because I think they're doing Epicenter, they're doing Pro League finals, they're doing E-League, so they're going to be busy at the end. I think they're doing Oakland as well. So yeah, they have plenty coming up, so that'll be good. But yeah,
what do you think?
Certainly, I could see Navi taking it off them. I think they're going to be. I don't know. I actually don't think they'll remain number one into 2017. I think someone will dethrone them by the end of the year.
What do you think, Yanko? What's your sense?
Although I guess you have to wait for the major, right? The major is like the next big test.
Yeah, probably towards the end of January. But yeah, I think that the final day of New York, like those semifinals and the final, I think that was one of the best endings of final stages of a tournament.
Yeah.
Like in CSGO ever, perhaps, in terms of the quality of the games and the quality of
like all three matches
that was on display. Yeah, all three were pretty insane. So in that sense, it comes down to the small nuances and also individual performances on the day. I personally think that I'm not sure. This Navi team is looking so scary, and that's with them having basically 3.5 maps in their pool right now. They can't even Cobble, which was their like map to go. They're not even that comfortable on it yet. That's like their next map that they're practicing to get it into the pool. They still need to decide, like, probably they have to pick up Nuke at least a little bit at some point because people will pick it against them.
Yep.
If nothing else, right? So that's looking really scary. But if I have to say, I'll go with SK just because I think that they always kind of lose a tournament in a sort, like they had the Malmo thing, and then they always tend to bounce back after that and recover.
Well, the funny thing is, Yanko, on that note, okay, so DreamHack Austin was like an NA in South America tournament, right? If we exclude that, this is kind of a good point about how they haven't like been that active, and it's their era, but like they haven't had the same dominance that other teams have. Think about this, Moses. They've never won 2 international tournaments in a row. Because they won Columbus, then they lost Malmo. Then they won EPL, then they lost ECS. Then they won Cologne, and now they lost New York. Like you have to realize, think of every other all-time great team, NiP, even Very Games, mate. They won a couple of international tournaments in a row. Then you had Fnatic, Envy. All these teams have won a couple of tournaments in a row. Even Very Games. Yeah.
This might sound bad, but I think that this isn't to take away from SK's excellence.
Here he comes, fucking Brazilian hater. Listen, they're people as well, Moses. Just stop being so fucking biased. So I don't. Come on, then.
But I mean, if you look at when they like rose up to this number one team in the world, it does coincide with Olaf's Guardian injury.
Keep going.
Navi dropping off. Astralis having a really rough time. Them dipping. It does coincide with a lot of like the former tier 1 teams not getting like necessarily beaten, but just kind of fading away slowly due to whatever reason. Like there was 3 or 4 teams that just kind of entered this slump this year.
I mean, the best way to put it, to not be unfair, like aside from VP, is not like that one didn't change much, but put it this way. In terms of Na'Vi and Fnatic, they were the 2 clear best teams in the world who were always making the final. And it's not like SK made them become injured and not as good. Like, they sort of themselves took care of that. Now, by the way, that does happen in history. Like, one of the things that's interesting about the history of all games is sometimes timing really is key. Like, if you, like a famous example, okay, here's a good one for you, Moses, is like the Chicago Bulls of the 90s didn't just dominate because they had Michael Jordan, right? I know that's the storyline everyone says. It's also because look who their rivals were. The Lakers, the Celtics, the Pistons were the teams that dominated the 80s, right? And all of them had injuries and people getting too old, and they all just faded away. Exactly the time when the Bulls went crazy. Now, that doesn't mean that the Bulls would never have won, but put it this way, say you give like 2 more years to all those teams. They might have been delayed a bit before they became the best, They might have still had to battle them. So you're not saying they're shit, you're just pointing out that like it depends on the overlap of the other great teams, right, as to when you can dominate.
Yeah, and I mean that doesn't take anything away from SK because what they've done is incredible. I still think tactically and in terms of the roles of that team, they're the most figured out team we have.
See, the obvious joke here is, I make like a special title for every episode now. The title obviously would be Moses downplays SK's greatness. Like that would be the most epic one.
You do the Kanye. You're like, Moses hates Brazilian people.
Moses doesn't care about Brazilian people.
But there's no better example than this, talking about SK versus Fnatic versus Navi. SK is in the same group as Fnatic, and that's the new Fnatic at Epicenter, and that's the first time they will meet on LAN since
Katowice, right?
Since Katowice. And it's the same thing with Navi. They only just played in New York in a best of one in the Swiss stage. So they didn't play a best of 3 against Navi either since Katowice, which was in March. So they mostly would meet with like G2 and VP in playoffs of tournaments.
The funny thing is, you were mentioning Navi, and obviously, I think it's pretty obvious that their problems on Cobble are going to be something they definitely have to solve. Because here's the interesting thing. If you look at how they actually, I'm just going to look it up now, just check the stat, but if you look at how they didn't qualify for Pro League, when they've played all these online matches, because the Pro League format is you just ban 2 maps, basically, and then it just gets drawn, isn't it drawn randomly from the remaining 3 maps or something?
No, it's like...
you ban blindly, the week before.
Yeah.
No, but that's what I mean. You ban and then there's just 3 maps. Well, it depends if there's overlapping bans, right?
One team bans 2 maps blindly. The other team picks 3 maps blindly. So if 2 maps coincide, there's always the 3rd map that's being played, and you pick the maps in the order you want to play them. Yeah. So the map you want to play first, you put it in. So if it's not banned, you get that. But
anyway, the point I was going to make, right, is that in their last 5 games on Cobblestone Online in EPL, Navi's lost all 5. And part of the reason why they're getting fucked here is because they are obviously doing the blind ban that the old Navi did, which is nuke cash every single time. That's their blind ban, right? So as a result, Cobble's always going to be out there, and that's going to be a map. Like in series, all the teams that are good on Cobble are definitely just going to pick it against Navi. Right now, it's going to happen. So as a result, they can still win, they can still be good, but that's going to be the obvious huge weak spot for them. What do you think, Wyankit? Or Moses?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So if I were Navi, I would probably just practice Cobble every day as much as I can, because I think that it's not a question of whether Navi will be good on Cobble. I think it's a question when, because they have a really good system on the map. The system in itself is not going to change much. It's just them getting used to having Simple in that, and maybe him and Seized swapping a couple of positions, something of the sorts, right? So I feel that it's definitely going to be a strong map for them yet again.
Wait a minute, Janko. Let me just check this a second, because here's the problem. I have the opposite opinion to you on this. I think that Cobble will never be a strong map for them. And part of the reason why is because I think the reason why Navi's T-side isn't as good is because now that Starix can't talk all the time, you can't really intricately set a round up, You can't trigger someone, you walk over here and then watch their screen and go, right, now you're going to go. You can't do any of that. And unfortunately, you're leaving it to your players at times to have to figure out how to do that. Well, just think about the players in that team, right? Edward looks like he never talks. Simple and Flamey are not cerebral players who are going to know how to do this sort of thing. So what does that leave you with? Seized and Guardian, it's hard to know where's the tactics going to come from in this team.
I think that applies to other maps as well, like Mirage. You play the default on Mirage, go for mid control. There's a lot of things happening. People might flash and peek. They might be aggressive. So you need to make a lot of fast decisions, split-second decisions, right? I think that's similar to Cobble. So you have to be able to learn it, because otherwise you're just going to suck. So it's I think that if they are unable to do it on Cobble, they won't be able to do it much better on a number of other maps.
Mirage at the moment is their best map. So do you predict that they will figure out Cobble and they'll get good on it? Is that your prediction?
Yeah.
They have to. They have to, because that.
Well, they don't have to, Moses. They could just suck a dick on it and keep losing on it over and over and get their heads banged. That's a possibility as well, by the way.
No, but it's like that map is. I hate that map. That map is such a piece of shit that every team plays it. Every team plays it, even if they're not good on. Of course. Yeah, except whatever, fucking Astralis. But literally every team is willing to play Cobble except for Astralis and Navi. So even if they're not world beaters on it, because of the layout of the map as terrorists, you get to just basically sit back and set up whatever execution you want. You're always going to be safe as T-side. This is why teams like to play it, because CTs can't fucking do anything.
Oh no, that's the funny thing. It's
such a safe pick to have, and if Navi can't play it and can't play Nuke and can't play Cash, they're never going to realize their potential. You can't have 3 maps in the pool you can't play.
Well, here's the funny thing. When I did my video about Navi after New York, basically I tried to figure out, considering they just won a tournament, that's the time when everyone's going to be like, they're invincible, they win every tournament. So that's the time I tried to lay out which teams will match up well against them. And because they have this Cobble weakness, Mate, I could list like 9 teams. I'm not even joking. Like, you could go like Envious, Heroic, Virtus.pro, fucking, who else, SK, Dignitas. Like, almost everyone has Cobble as like at least like a top 4 map in their pool. So that's going to be a problem right there. And by the way, like, obviously Na'Vi has the mad skill where I'm sure they'll brute force like 1 or 2 games on Cobble. But the idea is, if it's an auto loss because you're never going to ban it and you're always going to have to play it in a best of 3, that puts so much pressure on those other 2 maps. Like in that scenario, imagine then you're playing like an SK type team, and then the difference is the map you're picking is like Mirage that they might like as well. Now you can get 2-0'd on like a regular basis, you know.
I mean, it's like what we talked about on the desk in New York when you said like you have Cobble, which is a map that is basically an easy win for VP in that final, which is something that Na'Vi doesn't have. Any map that they play in that pool is a map that VP is going to be comfortable with as well, while VP has the advantage of playing a map that Na'Vi is still uncomfortable on.
So yeah, is there a reason Na'Vi's always hated Cash? Did Cash do something to Na'Vi that I don't know about?
Here's the thing: you have to remember the reason why Cash became like the key ban for them is because they used to ban the old nuke as their permaban.
Yeah, and
then when that. At that time in history as well, like Cash wasn't in the map pool actually. That was like in 2014, and then when Cash came along, for some reason they switched to that, and then obviously Nuke got taken out, and once Nuke was taken out they just focused on Cash as like the new map they'll never play. And then the mad part, this is what was really bizarre, was when Nuke came back, a lot of us said, so what do they do now, you know, like what do they switch to? And that was when Zeus came out and made that tweet where he literally said something along the lines of like, you know, I'd rather play Nuke than Cash, like I'll never play Cash essentially, and they've kept up to their word. They always ban it.
So weird. You'd think with like Sarix, like that map is like sneakily very tactical. Like that's like we've seen great tacticians on that map come up with really cool ideas and have really cool game plans. Like, it just amazes me.
I've just looked here online. The only time they played it was that time when they fucked up the vetoes for ESL Pro League Season 3. You know that match that got them eliminated against Mouse Sports? That's the only time they played it all year. Like they haven't even tried it. Like here's the thing. It's the idea that they won't even try it against some... Here's what you do. If you're in Pro League, at least try it against some like low-level Pro League team who's not that good on Cash. Why not agree to have like float the ban then? And
to be fair, Doug,
you might win just playing it.
This season, they can't exactly be testing Cash in Pro League seasons.
I mean, it's because before that was their one veto, and there's no reason for them to ever try the map if they're comfortable with playing the other 6, right? I think the problem with that is... as well, I don't know. I mean, Zeus was the most vocal about it. I'm guessing it's a team decision. But now Zeus is gone, Starix is there, you have Simplin. When you look at that team and like the players on the team, you're thinking they could be a fucking amazing Cash team. They have like great strategies, great tactics, but they also have like really good aimers. And Cash is a map that you can go for a lot of aim duels, or you can at least get yourself into after plant positions on A, and then you can play like post plant and people can go for aggressive peaks. You have Guardian with the op, like who can be aggressive, get you picks. I mean, for me, I would have expected them to switch to playing Cash with the new update because it makes much more sense for them than Nuke because they never played Nuke before even, so and they don't have like a good background.
You know, so you're not going to pick Nuke as the map you go to anyway, right? So.
And no one wants to play it anyway. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's worth trying at least, especially in this scenario here. Like, here's what Na'Vi should really think now. Is in the past, I always let Na'Vi get away with those 2 bans because I always thought to myself, luckily, not many people are going to pick Nuke if you leave it out there, so you can still afford to ban Cash first. And then secondly, you are so good on the other 5 maps. It's like I can give you credit. Like, yeah, okay, you're going to be fine on those. The problem is now, because of the Cobble thing, if you're Na'Vi, you have to now think, wait a minute, if we've turned out to be really bad on Cobble, maybe we just switch to Cash. You know, like what fucking Luminosity did earlier in the year, where they were like, you know what, we've tried playing Cash a fucking gangloads of times. We keep getting upset on it, so why don't we just switch to Dust 2 as our map we'll play in permaban? And that's literally what transformed them to become like unbeatable for a little while, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
It's also because, like, I mean, they had that 16-0 loss against Fnatic in their first official game, so they were just saying, fuck this map. Like, we won't be playing this shit. But it was, again, I remember we were talking about it before they actually did it after Malmo, that they look like an amazing Dust 2 team, potentially, right? Double up, setup, Cold and Fallen. Again, a lot of, like, good aimers, an open map. So you could see, like, as soon as they switched, okay, that it was mostly, like, online games, ECS or something, but they won, like, 15 Dust 2s in a row against... Because people were constantly picking it against them. They were leaving it in the pool. They're like, oh, yeah, they just started playing this map. We can beat them. Nope,
they turned out to be pretty good. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's some new a new piece of information. Okay, I mean, we know it was some news. So it was announced that Makelele will actually stand in for NiP at Epicenter, which is coming up, ESL finals, Pro League finals, and E-League. So he's going to play 3 tournaments. Which, first of all, by the way, in itself, even if he's still in theory standing in, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I don't know why no one else has thought of this. If he rocks it at those 3 lands and they do super well, I think, I'm sorry, Pith, you're not going to be coming back to this team, mate. I mean, like NiP won't say that now, and maybe they don't believe it because it's sort of like a trial period type thing. But if he does super well in 3 tournaments, I don't see how they can just like be, well, thanks for the game, mate. See ya, you just go off to obscurity and we'll just go back to getting banged out of the major. Like, come on, what do you think about this? Makelele coming back in NiP.
You know, I agree. I think he's going to be gone, especially because this injury, like there wasn't a lot of fanfare around it, like him having to sit out for this injury. Like no one ever talked about how severe it was, but if he's out for this long, like that's got to be a pretty serious problem that he's got with his wrist. I don't even know what it is. So that's going to be an issue. The only way that he comes back is if somehow like Freiburg goes on a massive slump again, and then that would be the only logical replacement would be if Pitt comes back.
His
Freiburg
problem is, I mean, like NiP really needs to do some sort of like hygiene or get some sort of like antiviral like process involved in their team house because they've got this really dangerous disease that people keep falling for. It's called rapid onset fifth manitis in NiP, and what happens is all the other 4 members are immune. You know, like they're fine, you know, they love each other. Like, even though actually Freiburg is a dead corpse who actually is, like, they don't know he's been dead for like 4 years now, but they all think it's fine. They're all fine, right? But every 5th man who comes in, it's like, oh, things are going well early on. Yep, things are going well. You seem to have have you got a bit of a cough? No, it's like a zombie movie, you know, you haven't been bitten, have you? Nope, just covering his arm up like, I'm all right, and he's walking on and you just know, oh, when's the moment going to come? Like, he's trying to do a zombie, get him, kill him. It's like, oh, actually, is he really the dead one now? Like,
I mean, did you see the interview that Get Right did this? I mean, it was just this morning, so I don't know if you've seen it. But he gave a pretty much glowing review of Makelele, saying, you know, he's grown a lot because remember last time he was on the team, it was the personal issues that knocked him off, and he said he's, you know, all his experiences with teams that he's had to rebuild and that he's struggled through some personal things that has made him like a better person, a better player. He's the one calming people down in stressful situations now, which wasn't the case before. Yeah. You know, that they talked about, you know, working through a lot of the situations, adding him into the roster, how he's going to play within them, and how they found like this really comfortable middle ground where both parties are happy in terms of structure and freedom. So I mean, it just seems like everything's pointing positive with this Makelele stand-in situation.
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's what NiP does, Moses. NiP is like a fat chick that instead of actually like buckling down and losing weight and changing their diet, they just like change their hair color or they just get like a really weird new kind of fashion to try and like make themselves feel like, oh yeah, see, I'm looking good, like it's looking good, right? So basically, like translation on that interview for Get Right, he's like, yeah, what I really love about Makelele is that he's a 5th member, but not with changing any of the original 4. And I love the way that sort of distracts me from the fact that the original 4 run into the same problems every 6 to 9 months. And so what I'm really loving about his spirit is the way it makes me not have to think about the fact that I inevitably will have to change this 4-man lineup. And also, I love money.
Well, I think we just found the title for the episode. NiP is like a fat chick.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah.
No.
That's not bad.
Well, here's the thing. Freiburg. I mean, he had a really good finals at what was it, Star Series?
He had an okay finals.
G2.
Yeah, he had an okay finals.
He went 31-23 on Overpass.
How did he do over the series?
Against G2 specifically?
He did all right.
Yeah.
By the way,
the final series.
He had impact kill. It wasn't that he had like 6 stats. He just had impact kills. I agree on that. Like he made plays. It's true.
That's all you need from him. That's all you want from him.
Yeah, you need it more than once, like every 2.5 years or something like. Yeah. Like that, you know, that's one thing that triggers me the most, right? I'll tell you right now, boys. Anyone who uses this logic, you know, when like a team goes to shit completely, and someone's like, "Well, they can only get better now." I'm like, "Whoa! That doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever." Like that logic will ruin you if you use that logic. That's what Mouse Sports has been thinking for about a year. Like, well, we can only get better from here. Like, well,
I'm not really sure Mouse Sports have been thinking much in recent times.
I think what happens in Mouse Sports is
been broken finally.
They just go like. Yeah, he's been brought. He's done it. What I love. Here's the thing. We've mentioned this before, but it just tickled me so much, Yanko, that the only time. Here's the thing, right? You made so many stupid predictions for Mouse Sports that even you knew we were going to lose. And the one time you gave up, they beat Astralis, reamed them out completely, 2-0, crushed them, and then it's like in that moment, everyone was like, Yanko, why didn't you believe in them? It's like, oh, curse you! Like, that is so fucked up, isn't it? And then went straight back to sucking afterwards.
Astralis that loses.
And then went straight back to not winning after that. Like, brilliant. Yeah. Well, I'm back on the train now. I'm sorry, this train is going over a cliff.
You don't understand, Duncan. That was all my master plan. The moment I knew that was going to happen, the moment I predict against them, that's when they actually win, because it makes perfect sense in the world of CS:GO predictions.
I know what it's like.
I did it for my boys. I took one for the team.
Basically,
really nice
Yanko's
predictions at New York, guys.
I
I
liked I liked Moses' semi-final prediction for Team Liquid versus Na'Vi. I mean, I remember he said that Simple was going to have a really bad birthday because he'd be like not able to drink all his sorrows away after that. I think he said beating that Team Liquid was going to give him.
Listen, I was a commentator.
You know what, Moses? You're a real piece of work. Piece of work. That's what I was going to say there. Piece of work. So, okay, no. Here's the thing.
That was a nice skit. Like,
wasn't it? Yeah. It's very, very smooth. So, I just think, I have to say, by the way, it would have just been so epic if there was just a video of me just cutting back and I just say, what a piece of shit Moses is. That would just be one of the all-time. That's like as better. That's better than GG, motherfucker. That's like some legit shit, like. Also, as far as I can tell, the principle with Mouse is that Yanko's like the mother bird who has to kick the baby bird out of the nest, so that as it's falling, it has to learn how to fly. Otherwise, it dies when it hits the ground, So, okay.
Can we touch on really quick? I want to do like just 2 minutes, like just quick thoughts on this, because we didn't get to do it when it happened. But how the fuck does Mouse Sports go a whole year of struggling, bring in Kassad, make E-League playoffs, and then kick Kassad like the day after, like the month afterwards? Like, how does that happen? Why are teams? Because Optic's doing this now too. How are teams like having good results and then changing things immediately afterwards? Because Optic is changing the opposite of their team, and right after having a good New York performance, I don't understand what teams are doing right now.
That's the problem with Mouse. Like, no one. I think that's the team who, throughout this year, had like the worst roster management, probably out of all teams. Because you need to remember, at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, they decided to kick Gob because he wasn't dedicated enough, and have Capio as their in-game leader. Coach. He of course fucks off like after a month, like found a real job or something. See ya, boys. So they're stuck with a roster without an in-game leader. So Nico has to, and it all started back then. Now with Kassad, it was like, mostly as far as I know, they like it was some, as always behind the scenes stuff. They got a potential offer from another coach, and that deal fell through midway. So then they were like without the coach because they already let go of Kassad, and he obviously didn't want to, go back immediately to that team after they just cut him for another coach. So out of the people who were like available, I think it was Oscar who mentioned LMBT because he was his coach in Hellraisers, I guess, for a time. So that's like, okay, let's go with this, boys.
Okay. Now
but I think it's obvious. Like, I think the work he did. People will say that I'm biased because he's my friend, but you just look at the results that Mouse Sports managed to achieve while he was their coach, and that was with him like not even originally doing what he wanted to, like fully in-game lead. That was like with like helping out and helping Nico with calling until everyone gets comfortable with him.
I mean, this is no exaggeration, Yanko. They literally, that was their only legit win, best of 3, over a top 10 ranked team. The other one was like G2 with Fux as a stand-in. Like, fuck off. That doesn't count, unsurprisingly. So that's their accomplishment. He gave them the one best of 3 series that they fucking won. Wasn't that where he was like in-game leading as well?
Yeah, and they also managed to qualify for the major, which, isn't an easy feat nowadays with all the teams that need to go through the qualifiers. So, yeah, they did play like shit pretty much at the major, but I don't know. It was kind of a tough group as well. They were making a lot of mistakes. So, all in all, I was really surprised by the development of things. But yeah, as I said, I'm expecting someone to pick him up.
I've got a question for you. How much say does Nico have in what Mouse does in any of these respects, with the coach or with like players coming and leaving? Does he have like a more of a say than other players? What do you think?
As far as I know, like it's all a team decision pretty much. The team votes on stuff like that, like changing their coach and shit. But you need, like, let's be real here. When you look at Mouse as a team, Nico is the obvious star player of the team, and like the org will do whatever to keep him in the team, right, and make him happy. So let's say I'm assuming this now. This I don't know for a fact, but let's say Nico tomorrow doesn't want to play with Speedy. and he wants
God
feeding on.
forbid.
That's
This is sci-fi, guys. It's just a fantasy scenario.
or that's something that's definitely going to happen, right? That's like that
one day
he's going to get kicked from the team for someone else, because that's just how important he is for the organization, right? So you can say probably to an extent that other players pander to him in some of these decisions, knowing that if he's unhappy with them, they're fucking out.
See,
Yeah,
Nico, that was like a
it's-
sort of code there for you, mate. Like, you see what Yanko was saying there? Like if you wouldn't have to kick them, but if you were just to express certain opinions, like, you know what? I think we could get like Allo or someone into this team. I'm just spitballing. Just again, sci-fi scenario. It would never happen, of course. Speedy is a great player.
To me, it was so ridiculous when that like E-League clips were out and people saying Nico is toxic, because he's like probably one of the best teammates you could have, in a sense that, one, he's a fucking amazing player, like does everything for your team inside the game, and he's like always positive, like always brings the team
He's
up,
literally never publicly called out some players that I actually will say I think are shit at Counter-Strike on like the top level, you know, not as overall players, but he's never publicly called them out. Like, he's never said, for example, there's even a way you can do it that's not toxic, right? You could just say, like, yes, I did play very well in the match, but, you know, some of my teammates had problems getting to my level. You could do it in like a polite way. He's never even done that.
Well, he's also not the kind of person. His personality. He's not that kind of like star player who's going to like leverage the fact that he's the best player on that team to like to influence some kind of decision or to take over and just say, fuck it, I'm doing what I want. He's just not that kind of person. So I don't ever see that happening in terms of Nico, unless like he just gets like super frustrated at a certain point where he's just like, all right, this is enough. Unless they take like another back step, I can't see him like actually wielding that power.
I think the problem is right now that Mouse as an org, at least in my opinion, is not at the level where they can like buy out, let's say, Rain and bring him into the team. Like a real superstar player that's going to like be there with Nico and help him do the work. But on the other hand, I really think like I really value more Chris J in this year. He was the one, like the reason bringing in Oscar was because they wanted to replace Chris J with the op, but then he started playing so much better that, well, there was no point kicking this guy now, right? So I think Chris J is at a level where he can play against the tier 1 teams and do a pretty good job at it. Yeah. And from what I've seen from Lowell in Pro League, granted online and all of that stuff, I mean, he held his own against teams, you know, had really good carry performances for a team like Penta. You need to realize, like, his teammates are not, like, on that high of a level as well. So I think right now they're looking better, like, as a team, and you see the roles they have. So I'm interested to see if they stick together and if they can finally like start making playoffs of tournaments more regularly and have best of 3 wins.
The fact that they had to wait for months to get Oscar, because I think the first time I heard that Oscar was definitely going to be joining Mouse Sports was right around Columbus, like right after Columbus, and it's just like insane that they waited this long for his contract to end, and then he's gone after like 6 weeks.
Okay,
like,
let's talk about this topic
then.
The Here's the thing, okay? I'll tell you like that. I'll give you the timeline. Basically, after Columbus, it was even already internally discussed in Team Liquid. Like, Simple is like, we can't handle him. Like, especially, here's a key detail. Forget, like, as a teammate, he just couldn't handle living in America. Like, it was already known, like, he can't, it's like, he's cracking up. And by the way, that part's fair. Like, he's the only person who wasn't living in his own home and was living with, like, the fucking Team Liquid League of Legends Academy or some retarded shit like that. Like that's not anywhere for anyone to live, surrounded by animals like League of Legends players. So, anyway, he obviously, right, it was already discussions like maybe he's going to leave. Like, at the time, if you remember, when they went to Malmo, obviously they kept him after Columbus because they had such an insane result. They thought, like, let's see if it works out with Kusta at Malmo, right? They were already discussing maybe Simple just has to go to Europe and he comes back infrequently. Like, they were already trying to figure it out, right? So this was the time period, actually, where when I was talking to Hiko, and then by proxy, since obviously Hiko discussed everything with GB James, he was like, who else could we get? And I said, well, you have to realize you're not going to get anyone from FaZe, for example. None of them want to go to America, mate. Like, they're the obvious people to pick because they've got all the talent and the team shit, and there'll be super big buyouts. And then I said, like, again, like, at the time, believe it or not, I floated names like Pimp, but at the time I understand why they didn't want to do that, you know. And I was like, well, these are people who, the whole point here is, since you can't get anyone who's a big name or because they'll just stay in Europe, or someone who's got a big contract. What you have to look for, mate, is you have to look for people who you see potential in, and you're going to gamble on it, right? You're going to get the guy to come to America. So what's funny is the names I picked were like Pimp, and then one of them I said, why not get Oscar? And I showed him, like, look, on tier 2, he's dominating. He's also a sick AWPer, by the way. Remember, this is before JDM, so if you're going to swap him in for Simple, I even think it makes sense in your team. And because remember, they were going to take out Dren, and they would have this in theory would be like Oscar and Kuster. And so I was like, okay, how about this? And then they actually did talk to Oscar. The problem is, basically, I don't care saying this publicly, I don't think this is a problem to say at this point in time, but he's not in Mouse. Basically, Oscar sort of said, I actually probably would, seriously think about this offer. I might be willing to move to NA to join a team like Team Liquid. Problem is, I have actually already signed with Mouse. So this is we're talking maybe 4 months before. So it was already known, he's definitely going to Mouse. So the weird thing about it is, like you're saying, the notion is, I've mentioned it many times before, that's actually why I think in a weird way it freed up Mouse to have bad performances in the meantime, because they were always like, listen, don't worry about this, we're still figuring things out, and we know Oscar's coming eventually. It's you can see that on the horizon. So the idea that when he finally comes, you have one LAN with him. By the way, online, they were doing fucking super well. They were dominating at EPL, and they were actually suddenly had a pretty good map pool as well. So everything looked like it was fixed. Then they go to one LAN, Oscar does really badly at the one LAN, and then suddenly, boom, it's over. That story I do not buy whatsoever. It just doesn't make sense, That's no one, we're talking about
Oscar story.
We're joking about NiP never doing anything. It's always the opposite. Teams won't make changes that are fairly obvious. So the idea that these were well, he's had one bad line, get the fuck out of here, that. There's got to be more to that story. I mean, I can't publicly speculate in terms of I don't actually have any information. So what do any?
He made that release where he said he just felt like once he got into mouse sports, he couldn't put in the proper amount of work. I don't know. It was a really weird situation.
I'm saying that's bullshit because, again, this is a guy where he played... By the way, he played a lot of LANs for a Tier 2 player. It reminds me of when Mouse earlier in the year were going to all the Tier 2 LANs. They were very active still, and he was playing a fuck ton of FPL. This is it's like the simple scenario. The reason why you have to try these guys is not only are they good, but they practice like motherfuckers. So, the idea that suddenly he's I can't really dedicate myself to Counter-Strike and I can't really play much. I'm not buying it, mate. That's not a convincing alibi.
But it's also different in terms of team practice and individual practice. Playing FPL is you just run around and shoot and whatever, right?
Yeah.
If I can give credit to Mouse Sports for one thing, it's that they have been working their asses off throughout the year. They have 10-hour practice days and shit, and that's a whole lot different than playing 10 hours of FPL. Even that much. So. Okay. I think the problem was that also Mouse likes to boot camp in Cologne in the offices for 7-day periods and stuff, and I think that was the rigorous practice regime and the amount of hours that you had to put in a row from 12 in the morning or 1 in the morning until 11 at night. That's something that he was not comfortable with, because with FPL you have your free, you can play whenever the fuck you want. You can play 3 a.m. but you don't have any opponents to practice against at 3 a.m. and he has personal shit back home that he needs to take care of and stuff. So then he was just, as far as I understood, was getting into a bad mood personally and didn't have as much passion and as much passion to practice and to play the game, which in turn caused his individual performance to deteriorate, and he feels like he's holding the team back in terms of not just individual skill, but also the amount of practice they want to put in as a team.
So if that is true, and this is the scenario, here's my question. Does this mean Oscar is done ever trying to be a tier 1 team player? Or does he go to another team in 3 months and suddenly it magically works there?
The question isn't whether Oscar is going to try, it's whether a team's going to take the risk after this kind of an episode. Which team is going to say, yeah, we'll take Oscar? He better have some baller performances to make it worth the risk. But why is a team going to pick him up if they say...
Dude, if I was an NA team, this is a perfect example of a scenario where the guy's stock is very low, but I guarantee if you give Oscar 5 LANs and he doesn't mentally implode, he'll be way better than any player you can get in NA.
Yeah, you're right. But if he can't endure the practice regimen of mouse sports when they're in Europe, how's he going to move over to the States and live far away from all of his friends and family and have to be in a team house where the only thing he's going to do because he doesn't know anyone is play fucking Counter-Strike and practice? That's the big risk there.
Mate, scrims in NA are FPL. That's the ideal scenario. What the fuck are you talking about, you idiot? That's the dream. He just runs around headshotting people this is great. No tactics. Loving this. Strat is, flash me in on B. There, let's go. Brilliant. He literally, NA practice for him is going to be the fucking Russian stereotype. Drop up, rush B. That's it. That's scrims. Okay, Jakob, come on, give me the prediction.
What?
Do you predict he ever comes to a tier 1 team in the next few months? Or is he telling the truth totally and he's done and you think like he kind of tried it once and it's like, he's just going to slide back down?
I don't think he's done. I just, as Jason said, like it's hard because all these teams, like in that term, in that sense, Hellraisers was a perfect team for him because they're not a team, as far as I know, that are going to play 12 hours a day and stuff like that. But he's a team in which he is the star and they will play around him and he can be comfortable, and he's the Nico. He was the Nico of Hellraisers in that sense. Pretty much whatever he wants in terms of play time and everything, they're gonna have to do that pretty much. So I think that he will play for a team, let's say, like Hellraisers or something similar, maybe even potentially Gambit at some point in time, because you look at that team and they have the major spot because they have Adrenmo and Dosha, right? But Dosha has been like, not impressive to say the least for a very long time comparing to his early days form. So a question is, after the major, if they don't retain their spot again, maybe they want to bring a different player instead of him.
Yeah. No, that's
like
by the way
a possible future I see for him. I honestly doubt it, even though it may be in talks with you, he said, but I doubt that he will like move to NA if he gets an offer to play there.
Here's one thing, though. I actually do think one thing that you touched on is a key problem that Mouse is always going to have, which is you have to realize people from 1.6, so Counter-Strike fans, still think Mouse as the name is really big. They don't understand. The big fuck-up Mouse the org made is that they used to be one of the biggest in the whole world in terms of esports. They had like amazing players in StarCraft 2 and CS and all these games, right? But the problem they made is in CSGO, they were one of the teams that by the time CSGO came, you saw all the games they've dropped off in. They don't have the best players in any game. And so now they've just become not an international team, they're a German team at this point in time. So yeah, they're the biggest German org, but they're not a massive, they're not a powerhouse, right? Like teams like Team Liquid have way more money than Mouse Sports do and way more leverage and all power. So the problem is, like, this is actually the nightmare that FaZe is in, right? Which is, in a normal world, if every team had equal amounts of money, FaZe would not exist right now with that lineup, right? The people would have picked up those players, they would have gone, and actually, it would have like naturally sorted itself out. Like, eventually they'd have worked their way from different teams, and they'd all be on good teams right now. Instead, the problem with FaZe is you go to FaZe when you don't have that much opportunity, right? You get the sick salary, and then you get so much salary, and you're on such a high buyout that now no team that you could actually go and make better can afford you, and no superstar team wants you because you're not playing like a superstar yourself. So you can't get out. You're in a mad prison. You're in like a luxury high security prison where they've got like fucking Russian chicks come in and just blow you all sex slaves, literally sex slaves. And that's not literal, by the way. That's metaphorical. And metaphorical sex slaves. That could also be another subtitle. Moses, too many subtitles. Phases, metaphorical sex. Okay. And like people come in and they go, "Oh, sir, you've won a game. Would you like to take the rest of the tournament off?" "Yeah, why not? I'll lay back, get a hot stone massage, get banged out in that best of 3 decider. And have I got the tickets booked? Yeah, I can change that now. Yeah, have the Learjet ready. Okay, I'm off." And and then what they used to do to save money, because they had to spend so much on the Learjet, is actually they never used to land in Portugal. They used to just fly over and then they'd give Fox a parachute and he'd just jump out. And so the last time they just never gave him a parachute. And scene. That's the end of that fantasy. Okay, no, the point I'm making is, the point I'm trying to get to is, if you look at a team like Mouse, if every team had equal money, I would say, okay, I can fix this team overnight, guys, right? Instead of kicking out that next guy like you did before, what you do is you kick out Nex, bring in like AZ. And if he can speak English enough, which I'm sure he can, great, there we go. That's the firepower you need. That's a team that, like, that alone could be the move where now you could do like a G2 type run. You could be a explosive team. You could now upset people. Unfortunately, that's not an option for Mouse. And actually, I don't blame them with the Lowell pickup because I don't know who the fuck they can pick up at this point in time. Who's going to join Mouse? That's like going into a low luxury maximum prison.
Talking to Nico about what's going on and like who are the potential players they're trying out.
Is it depressing?
It's fucking depressing, man. Like some of those names, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, bro, like there's no one. Like,
is it like, yeah, we got Billy the Hook? Isn't he called the Hook because he hasn't got a hand and a hook instead? Yeah, but he's good with the other hand. Okay, yeah. Who else have we got? Little Jimmy No Balls. Oh, gee, he hasn't got no balls, has he? Yeah, he's a coward. Oh, fucking hell. Who else have we got?
That would fit perfectly in mouse boards then.
Listen, boys, I don't want to hear anything depressing about roster
Oh,
changes.
no, wait, my bad.
Some of
Actually,
the names kicked around in North America.
Actually, they already kicked out Jimmy No Balls. He was called Next, right? So, anyway, jokes on him. Anyway, okay, so here's the question. Do you have, without being biased, what do you think the actual future is for Mouse with this lineup? Assuming this lineup's the one that stays, what do you think the future is?
I'm not really sure. The problem they have is they need time to practice to get a couple of maps in. But I think this lineup will be probably the best one they've had this year in terms of result. Because of the roles they have, I think it makes more sense with having just one primary opera, of course. And also because other teams, as we mentioned earlier, kind of fell off, like some of the tier 1 teams. So there's a bigger chance of them getting like more regular best of 3 wins. So I would predict them to, at one of the tournaments, whether it's E-League or I think they're going to Oakland as well. They're going to Pro League finals. I'm predicting that they will make at least one playoff out of those tournaments.
I agree.
Which is something we a team like FaZe hasn't managed to do for over a year.
True. FaZe never gets out of groups. So here's the thing. I also agree, Yanko. I guarantee, in fact, I'm going to put my life on it, that this team, Mouse Sports...
Really?
You never do this. You never put your...
Mouse Sports is going to finish top 4 at a tournament. Joke's on you, it's Ace of Predator Masters 3. And I'm out.
Fucking hell. How many teams are actually going to that?
That's a real tournament. Okay, but we won't talk about it anymore. So okay, here's the question now. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't touch on before, just to wrap that NiP thing up, that was where we digressed into this. NiP with Makalele, right? Here's the thing. Star Series looked super awesome, amazing, blah, 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 etc. I don't think they can do that every tournament. So what is your actual prediction for NiP with Makalele? Like, I mean, for example, we know at the moment, here's the easiest way to set it up. They have 3 tournaments that they said they're going to use him for. They're going to use him for Epicenter, they're going to use him for ESL Finals and E-League. So they have 3 tournaments, Yanko. How do you think they do over the spread of the 3? What kind of placing?
In Oakland as well.
Average placing? Yeah, but they haven't announced if he's playing there yet. What do you think? How do you think they do over these 3 tournaments? What would your guess be?
Well, it's also like the fact that they don't have an easy group in E-League either. They're like with VP and G2 in Epicenter. They're like with G2, Navi, and Dignitas. So that's like a really tough one. I do think though that they will make it like in Pro League at least. They will make it to the playoffs there. But as for the other 2 tournaments, I don't know. Like I'll just give them the 1. Oh, actually, in Epicenter, there's fuck it. I'll just give them the 1, like the Pro League advancing through. The thing is, like, it depends a lot on G2 because at the other 2, Epicenter and E-League, they're in group with them, and they can be like, really, really shaky. They can either be great or suck. But if G2 doesn't suck, then I think they will go over NiP in both of those tournaments. I think
NiP makes out groups in Pro League and E-League. What is their Epicenter group?
It's G2, NiP, Navi, and Dignitas.
Oh shit!
I'm loving Dignitas right now. I'm fucking like.
I do too. That scares me. I think
makes it out.
I think NiP is going to beat G2 in those groups.
Okay.
I think they'll be better than G2 in their groups. I don't think they're going to win any of those tournaments, obviously, but I think they'll make it into playoffs of at least 2 of the 3.
That's the thing. Like I look at these matchups and I can't say clearly like NiP is better, G2 is the better team. I think it truly depends on the form of the day and how fucking cliche it sounds and how much we hate this like sentence as well. Who makes less mistakes?
Yeah.
Because both teams like have their ways to win the game. It just depends like whether someone will fuck up or not.
I think that's the interesting part of that Epicenter group, though. I think Dignitas is the wild card in that more than G2. That's kind
and you
of
look
scary.
at it like they're a wild card because you say like looking at their like name, right? But looking at their results and how they've played recently, like looking at their form, let's say, they're probably like behind Navi in that sense because Navi won New York, but Navi continued to suck online. After that, didn't manage to qualify for Pro League. So
here's the thing: when you talk about this group, okay, so the key thing is because Navi themselves are up and down, and no one really knows how they're going, and they've got a very small map pool. Look at those 3 teams: G2, NiP, Navi. I actually think that the only team I think I'm certainly going to get out of that group is Dignitas, because I think Dignitas is consistent. They have a super deep map pool, and like the actual stars play like stars every game. So I would pick. I don't know if they come first or second, but I think Dig. I'm definitely getting Dig to get out that group, and then the other one, who the fuck knows?
I mean, the way you look at it, whether they make it out, because this is a system where the first place team goes to the semis, and the second and the plays the third from the other group in like
it's the same
quarters.
as Star Ladder at the beginning of the year, if you remember that. Star Ladder won that Fnatic beat Na'Vi at.
Yeah, it's the same as that one. So I don't know if you count getting out of groups if you're third or only.
I see what you mean. Right, if you finish third.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, I think that Dignitas, I would have them finishing top 2 in that scenario in the group, no matter what. Like, I can't see how they're not going to put it that way. Like the key thing for them is the beauty of Dignitas having like consistency in the players. Now, listen. Their top level is not going to like rock Na'Vi if Na'Vi turns up at 10 out of 10 level, that's true. But Dignitas is more consistently going to be there, and having such a deep map pool means you can match up against almost anyone in the fucking world if you play it smart.
I have to I don't think you saw this, but when we were doing Star Ladder,
I can't look at that, by the way. You have to describe it. I can't look in the chat.
No. When we were doing Star Ladder, there was the Dignitas manager who gave an interview, and they were playing G2. And Shox had like that crazy game against Envias on Cobble where he like just went completely ham. Yeah. And Dignitas manager says the sentence something like, because they asked him about Shox, how are you going to deal with Shox? And he says, we have players on our team who can match that level that we saw from Shox.
Yeah.
And we're like, it comes back to this, we're like, the fuck is this guy smoking? Like, granted, Dignitas has some very good players, but I don't think any of those guys can have the peak that Shox has.
No, obviously not. Here's the thing, right? Even if on the scoreboard, Magic Spoy or Config could do the same thing as Shox, the difference is Shox is one of those players where not only does he put up the mad numbers, but he's like the ultimate impact player. He wins clutches, fucking entry. He does like everything you want in the game at once as a star player. So those guys have their niche. They're very good, like rising talents, but there's a reason why every time we have like best player in the world discussion and people are like, is it Coldzera? Is it Nico? I'm always like, yeah, don't forget Shox as well. You have to put him in the conversation, boys. Well, actually, while we're on the topic, we may as well listen. By the way, but as Moses shakes his head there, I'll just remind you that Moses' selection of best player in the world was fucking Olofmeister, and he said this in July of this year. Let's just put that out there. Moses thought Olofmeister better than Nico and Coldzera.
We were on national television. You have to let the audience know that this guy is formerly a best player of the world, that he is in that conversation.
I didn't realize you worked for Riot Games and you were selling narratives. Okay. You're the one going ignorant, motherfucker. It's called Olofmeister with his broken arm. And the thing about Olofmeister is, that's like calling fucking Muhammad Ali like some sick boxer now. Like, yeah, he used to be great. Now he's shaky as... He's dead. He's dead now. Yeah, Olofmeister's dead now as well, mate. The Olofmeister that was best in the world is dead, motherfucker. So you go to his grave, give a eulogy, pour out some of that Hennessy, motherfucker, and then you move on with your life. And you make your choice now, son. You pick Shox, you pick Coldzera, you pick Nico. You make your choice and you live with it, okay, motherfucker? Olofmeister's gone. He's not walking through that door anymore. That guy called Olofmeister now, husk of a man. I hope he makes it back. Best of luck to him, but he's dead. I'm sorry, he's dead. Moses, I let him go. I put him on that Viking funeral. I let it sail out over the sea. I let it burn to a crisp.
You lit the arrow, launched it.
And then I've accepted it, Moses. You can't get over it for some reason.
It is.
And now you're talking shit on the boy Shox, who's a fucking legend.
I want that Olofmeister back.
Put him on the same boat as existence.
Jesus Christ.
Listen, mate.
Don't bring that up. Duncan is.
There's a dark power in the east that will rise again, Yanko. I know it will happen. The power is there. It will happen. It will happen. I'm telling you, it will happen one day, mate. And when it does, that'll be even more glorious than my comeuppance of Simple becoming the best, which all you motherfuckers tried to talk down on. But it happened. So I will be insufferable. So okay, here's the question. While we're on the topic, so we've done Group A there. What do you think about Group B at Epicenter? That's the one that's VP, Fnatic, Hellraisers. Now, here's the thing. It's obviously got less parity as a group because Fnatic, who the fuck knows what to expect from them? And unfortunately, Hellraisers, like, they're not as good as any of these teams in theory in this tournament. What do you think about Group B? Is it as obvious as it looks with VP and SK?
I think it is. Like, I have really a hard time seeing Hellraisers, like, getting over any of these teams and making it out of the groups. Now, who finishes first, who finishes like second or third in the group, I think that's like a much bigger question mark. But I think Hellraisers is the team that's going to go out after the groups.
Wait a minute, Hellraisers picked up that old FaZe player because they've got a dead Fox on their team. Okay, keep going, Moses. Keep going, Moses. Keep going. Keep going. What do you think about Group B, Moses?
I can't do it. Yeah, no, I think Group B is pretty blatant. I think Fnatic could be interesting, just depending on which Virtus.pro we're going to see show up at that event, because you do never really know which Virtus.pro you're going to get until you actually see him play at that event. But I think SK should be pretty easy to get out of that group.
Wait a minute, what the fuck? The format on Liquipedia says it's round robin, best of 2 series in the group stage.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that?
What does that even mean?
It's I'm not
You just
sure
play
how
2
the,
maps.
how
So
the
each
veto goes.
team plays everyone in the group on 2 maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a best of 2. I mean, it's like, I think 2 best of 1s back
Can we
to
get
back.
best of 2s the fuck out of this world? What the fuck even is a best of 2? Why is every league doing best of 2s now?
I think it's just best of 1 back to back, pretty much, with teams having probably like one team being the home team in one game and the away team in the other game, in terms of like veto advantage or something.
No, but the
I'm not
key
sure.
detail there, Yanko, is that if you look, like, when you say best of 2, what you normally do is you make it so that like a tie is 1 point overall and like a win is 3 or something, you know. So you make it, if you actually win the best of 2, both of them, that you get like more points from that. That's what usually people do in those groups.
Okay, so three teams make it out of these groups, by the way.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what Moses just caught up to where we were about 10 minutes ago when Yanko told me that, but okay.
I mean, the first team goes straight
In many
to
ways, the
semis,
dead fox of
and the
our
second
crew.
team plays the third team from the other group in
Yeah.
the quarters.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, Moses, it was like that Starliner tournament earlier in the year that Fnatic won.
I just time traveled. Listen, Duncan, it was a long night. It was a long night.
Brilliant, yeah.
You all had a few drinks.
Yeah, a few drinks.
We've all had a drink.
Yeah, Hellraisers is definitely the one out of Group B. So yeah, I mean, shit. That's all I got.
That's what makes this a good tournament, though. What I like about this is because only one team goes out and 3 go to the playoffs, it means that you get to see a lot of teams play each other early on in the group stage. You get a lot of matches, and then you get a real playoff. So it's almost like halfway between our sort of CSGO tournaments and like an international type scenario where you can, in theory, lose to people in the group, but play them again in the bracket anyway. So I kind of like that. You'll get, like, for example, you'll get to see people, like, let's say, for example, Na'Vi and G2 have a really sick match in the group, and then they meet in the semi-finals or the final or something. Like, that's going to be fantastic to see a team play twice, essentially, at a different set. We don't get to see that in normal single elim tourneys.
You basically have 6 out of the 8 teams in the playoffs, and you have first 3 days you have 8 best of 1s per day. So there's going to be a lot of CS.
I'll say G2's the one knocked out of Group A. That's gonna be nuts.
Okay, why are you picking G2?
I don't like that. I don't like that style they have. I don't like the reliance on Scream and Shocks. I think that really scares me. Especially we saw like how low it can get when you're in New York. I don't think they'll be that bad, but I think Dignitas is too solid of a team with star players right now that can match up with a good system. Navi's got the talent obviously to match up, and they've got a system. Their biggest thing is the map pool. And then NiP I think are just going to beat G2. I don't think G2 makes it out of this group.
But the thing with G2 is similar to what Duncan said about SK. They never win 2 tournaments in a row. It's like G2 never sucks 2 tournaments in a row. Like, they will,
First time for everything, boys.
Okay, fuck off.
First time for everything.
Okay.
Fucking Mr.
Well,
0%.
I know-
Obviously, that's Moses. That's the philosophy of his life. There's a first time for everything. There we go.
No, but actually, I mean, I even talked to some of the G2 guys at New York, and the big thing that they talked about after that was this was the wake-up call for them. So this is like the event. They actually put a lot of pressure on themselves for Epicenter.
Yeah.
Where they're saying, like, this is where if they do badly, if they do poorly again here, then, it really is that admission that something's not working.
That's a coincidence, because I actually went up to some of the G2 guys on, like, the night before day one, and I said, if you see that bald little douchebag, just tell him some shit about how, like, Epicenter's like the wake-up call.
No, New York's the wake-up call, motherfucker.
My mistake, yeah. I can't remember what I told them exactly. So, okay, here's the question though. Yanko, you're not just gonna, I mean, you've already essentially said it there. I agree with you, right? Here's one thing I hate about this world at the moment, is that every time G2 does badly in one tournament, people are like, right, they're dead, they're done, it's over, like, they're not good anymore. Like you say, they're like an up and down team in the real sense. Like, normally people do this and it tilts me so much. Like, they'll say a team like Mouse Spots, yeah, they're really up and down. They're not. They have the odd win and they mostly lose and don't make it anywhere in the tournament. Like, that's not up and down. That's down with like a fucking once in a blue moon up. G2's actually up and down because they have like a bad tournament, then like a really good tournament. So I actually think the problem with this group for me is I actually think Team Dignitas, just because like I said, across the field, I think they should get out certainly. I've got them down definitely. In terms of like the other 2 teams though, like, I only give Na'Vi the credit to get out because they have such fantastic individual players that I think they can go against those other two teams and be fine. Like, you know, having to beat like only one of them in theory to get out. So that's fine. But I actually think Na'Vi themselves can definitely get upset by anyone in this group. Like, I think they've got enough problems themselves. So the key detail to me is who do I pick out of G2 and NiP then? Because I have to go with one of them. And at the moment, I actually, personally, am feeling NiP to be the one that might not get out. Like, I think that whole, like, honeymoon of, like, oh, Michael back and he's super sick and we're going to win all the tournaments. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen, man. Like, I think they can have the odd tournament where they do super well, but I think that's a classic scenario where, I mean, we've said this a million times with players. Unless you address the actual problem in your team, bringing in a better player doesn't fix it. It temporarily gives you good games and you win more matches, but it doesn't actually fix the core problem. So I think NiP, I am actually favouring them to be the fourth place team here. What does Yanko think? Who does Yanko have?
Yeah, as I said, I also think it's probably going to be between G2 and NiP, but I wouldn't be surprised if Na'Vi fucks up yet again, because I mean in Kiev they botched it completely. Then they had a great performance in New York, but I think that's like there's not a big chance of that happening. They had more time to practice and everything, but yeah, with G2,
plus Kiev was also, they did play like Tyloo in their first ever fucking offline tournament where, like, if you've never played Tyloo before, like, good luck with that, you know.
Yeah, that's true. So I feel like that that's not going to happen. But G2, they also had like that great run. They lost to SK at Pro League finals, then they win ECS, and then they don't make it out of the groups at the major. I thought that like either G2 beats SK in that opening game, like in a best of one, and then SK loses to Fnatic in a best of one. That was my original prediction. So either that happens or SK like makes it out of the group and then wins the tournament. So I'm thinking that G2 makes it out of this group as well now. Okay. So I'm probably gonna have to go with NiP dropping out, because when you look at Kiev, right, where they won, they beat Astralis in the quarterfinals. That's like never, a fucking... It seems that these days that's not considered a success anymore.
Especially if you're NiP, like that is literally like your whipping boy. You're like, oh, awesome, we've got Astralis. That's that team that let us beat the fuck out of them.
Yeah, in group stages, they beat Hellraisers and Godsend. Again, nothing much to write home about. Semifinals, Cloud9, which never showed up to that game. That wasn't the Cloud9 that we saw like play well. And then they had the crazy game. I mean, the win in the final with that crazy second map going to overtime against G2. And that's like, for me, the only legit, like, okay, you really beat a really strong team and that's it. So I don't think we saw them tested that much. This is going to be definitely a way, way harder tournament. Like, let's put it this way, I think it's harder for NiP to make it out of groups here or like semis than it was for them to win that tournament in Kiev.
I want to ask you guys a question. With Na'Vi winning New York, were you guys actually impressed with Na'Vi as a whole?
No. Like, I actually think, remember, they won narrowly in a bunch of games, right? Here's the thing. One thing I give them massive credit for is that when you look at the fact they played the top three teams in the group as well, they have an insanely hard schedule. I'll give them that, okay? But here's the problem. They barely got to the final and then got one in the final with Simple having, like, I'm not joking, if you look at the stats, like one of the most bonkers tournaments you'll ever see. When you consider he was playing only like the top four teams, his stats at that tournament are mental. Like the amount of kills per round and then the low deaths per round, it's like the gap is ridiculous. So if that's what it took to narrowly get them to the final and then win the final, that's not going to happen every tournament. You can't bank on that, you know. So I think I think they've got a lot of issues. Like Guardian, here's the thing: everyone will remember the final and be like, "Oh, it's fine." No, that guy was having real problems for most of that tournament.
He wasn't there.
They were terrible on cobblestone. They look like their map pick ban is all over the place. Like, I think they've got all sorts of problems. The problem is, or rather, the reason why I'm not super worried is I still think they're one of the only teams where the insane level of skill they have is like. It's like I said in my video, okay? The reason why I think Na'Vi has a very bright future is they have three players who could be like one of the best in the world on any given day. Flamey, Guardian, and Simple. So they only need 2 of 3 to turn up. Like, forget, like, G2 needs like both players, Shocks and Scream, to turn up. Na'Vi's got like an insurance policy if one of those guys doesn't turn up. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. I was impressed by what Navi managed to do with the time they had and considering the changes they had to make, right? They had to change their in-game leader to C's need to change all of his positions with Simple as well. So considering all of that, I was impressed that they did manage to grind the win out against VP and in the grand final, and that they had those like dominating wins in the group stages. But looking at their overall play, I just think that they need more time. It's as simple as that. You could see those mistakes and happening, but that's something you polish out with practice. So at this particular tournament, I don't think Navi is winning Epicenter. I think that there's a really small chance of that happening, but I don't think they're going to be a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're going to be the top 3 team from this point on.
Okay. Here's one problem I have, okay? So you know that thing I said about NiP, where it's like, enjoy the next 3 tournaments, because if Makaleli does well, I'm pretty sure he's just in NiP. I've got a similar statement to make about Dig. Here's the sad part about Dignitas. I think right now, I'm loving watching them. I think they're a really interesting team. I think they've got a lot of potential. Unfortunately, I guarantee you, they can't last 4 months without one of their players getting stolen. I just guarantee it. I guarantee in 4 months from now, that lineup will be different.
But by whom? Because before, it made sense because Astralis was always like the best team in Denmark and they were doing better internationally. Now fucking Dignitas is the best team in Denmark. They're fucking legit. I mean...
Okay, Janko, I'm guaranteeing you, they take at least one player goes from Dignitas in the next 4 months to Astralis. I guarantee you.
No way.
Okay, you're predicting against it then. We'll see you in 4 months, motherfucker.
Yeah, well, look at who Astralis is looking at right now. They're looking at Glaive. They're looking at... and then there's Valdi as well. They could go after from Heroic, and not to mention Dignitas with being bought out by they were bought by the 76ers, right? Like they now have the body where if that's going to happen, the Dignitas is going to be like, no, boys, listen, we're on a good path here. Stick with the team.
I don't know why people think that's a thing in Counter-Strike. Like, look at the history of Counter-Strike. By the way, this happens in the fucking NBA. In the NBA, you have a contract with that guy for a certain number of years. If you want, you can tell that guy. This happened in the NBA, actually. Here's a good example, okay, Janko. In the NBA, there was a guy in the mid-2000s called Stephon Marbury, right? And he was the point guard for the Knicks. And he was actually a good player. The problem was he was a guy where like he had to get along with a coach, and if he didn't, that's why he'd moved from teams in the past, you know. And so the problem Stephon Marbury had was because he didn't get along with the guy who was the coach, who was Isaiah Thomas actually, and he didn't like the way the Knicks organization was doing things. He literally essentially told the Knicks like to fuck off, and so they literally just said, you know what? We're just going to sit you out for the rest of your contract. Sit on the bench for the rest of your contract and then just get the fuck out. And I'm not joking. They paid him millions of dollars. He sat on the bench and he was done. Now, here's the key thing. That, in theory, is what every NBA franchise could do. If Carmelo Anthony, like he did at the Nuggets, is like, I don't want to be on this team anymore, they could go, you know what, fuck you. Sit on the bench, you know what, that almost never happens. In 99% of cases, if a star player says, listen, like, I realize you have my contract, and in theory, you guys have all the power, but I really don't want to play here anymore. I don't like it anymore. The reason why teams always facilitate a trade is because they don't want someone playing for them who doesn't want to play for them anymore. So if tomorrow, Config or Magic's Boy wake up and they say, listen, Dignitas, like, I know what we've accomplished, but I'm sick of it. I just want to play in Astralis. I don't want to do that. I think it happens.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense because they're the best team in Denmark right now. They're better than Australia.
I'll tell you a principle, Moses. Here's a key principle for you, okay? This is admittedly a 1.6 principle. The reason why in history Get Right and Forest can always get good teammates, no matter what, is because it doesn't matter if they fall off. There's always someone wants to play with Get Right and Forest. Like, there's always like some JW... Dude, this happened last year. When Fnatic was the best team, JW was trying to make a move out of the team winning majors to go and play on fucking NiP with Get Right and Forest. You know why? Because in his mind, it was like some childhood dream, like, oh my God, I'm going to play with Get Right and Forest. Like, that... Dude, people like Device still have that pull. I'm not joking. Like, the team's bad. I agree. By the way, let's put it this way. I get it. I wouldn't make the move. I don't want the move to happen. But I'm just telling you, unfortunately, the way idiot CSGO players think, you know. I agree. I think Dignitas should keep this lineup and be like, we're going all in for the next 6 months. No roster moves no matter what. Let's see what we can do with it, you know. Unfortunately, I think because Astralis is shit in the bed so much, I just see that they're going to make like the Game of Thrones type move and they're going to get one of those players, unfortunately. And unfortunately, it'll probably fuck with Dig a little bit, you know.
Yeah, but you know, like they have to try and get Glaive because of the major spot. They have to go.
That's almost a certainty that they have to do that because, as you say, like for people who don't know, I'll very quickly outline it. Because you have to have 3 of the 5 players who are at the major to get your major spot. Because Dupree went away injured, one of those spots is actually for Zonic the coach. Now, there is 0 chance they're going to field Zonic in the fucking lineup at the major. Therefore, they only actually have 3. They only have the 3 spots in Astralis right now, which is Device, Carrigan and Zipnix. And the problem is, because they're going to kick Carrigan, they only have 2 players. Well, luckily for them, if they got Glaive in, he has one of the other spots, because he was the stand-in, remember, for Kirby. So the problem is, if they get Glaive, no problem. They can now do anything with the lineup. But if they don't get Glaive, they're fucked for the major. So,
well, the question would be, does that slot extend to the 6th player? Like, if can Zonic
almost
be
certainly
the
not,
6th
because
player?
otherwise people would already do fuckery. Like, if you like Fnatic, you'd keep it like Wenton, like, stick around, mate, and then you just keep using Majors, bottom them out. You know, you'd do some shit like that, wouldn't you?
Oh,
Yeah.
holy what about that? I mean, I don't know if you're done with this topic, but did you see that Twist is now going to call for Fnatic?
That's you know, when I was saying, Yanko, like, I don't have any faith in this Fnatic, like, they're not going to be any good. You remember I made that tweet when God said Fnatic swapped, and I said, like, they won't win any tournaments for 8 months, and they're all, like, cheesed off. This sign right now is almost like a white flag. Like, you may as well just be waving up a white flag. One of our star players who has shown a shyness to play on Tier 1 will be our in-game leader. That's like when Nitro takes over as Team Liquid in-game leader. What happens in there is, like, he goes, oh, guys, things aren't working, I'm going to be the in-game leader now. And it's like, right, set the egg timer. Tick, 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 ding. Yeah, I'm done being in-game leader. Come on, you can do it again. Say, yeah, I'm off. Like, obviously, that's not going to work out, is it, long run?
Oh, man.
I mean, I don't know. I saw the interview, and he said that, I mean, Venton was never in-game leading. It was supposed to be Jumpy. Then after the coaching change, Dennis took the role, but he doesn't want to do it, pretty much. And they had different styles. Like, Dennis was fast-paced, based on spawns and shit, and Jumpy wanted to be more, like, strategic. And Twist is similar to Dennis.
And then they were like, obviously, Elfmeister and Dennis were like, you want to do what? Tactics? You use the word tactics in this house. Never darken my door
Tactics?
again. I have no son. Get out of here. Like what the fuck's that? Listen, mate, we already kicked 2 people for that. You sure you want to fuck around with that? Tread carefully, motherfucker. Like, no, what I want you to do is throw smokes and flashes. Who's going to throw smokes and flashes? Well, you throw them for each other, mate. I've got the scenario. Here's the analogy, Yanko. Our favourite movie, Top Gun, is the problem in Fnatic in the last year has been that their scenario is like that situation at the end of the movie where it's like, you could be my wingman. Bullshit, you could be mine. Like, that's their scenario with flashes. So as a result, no one's anyone's wingman. No one's sticking with their fucking wingman. They're just all going out there trying to shoot down the Russian MiGs. Navi. And scene. Like, I didn't let stick the land in there, boys. Like, I did my best. I couldn't get anywhere on it. So.
I'm surprised you kept that on the rails as long as you did, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But, okay.
Yeah, but that's like, for me, that's a problem because it shows that there's apparently no one in that team who's comfortable with in-game leading, because a player who has, I'm assuming, never had to do it in his teams before now has to take up that role. And he's supposed to be one of your, like, most highest impact players, the guy who's supposed only to focus on his own game and giving like 100% individually, right? So I'm not really sure how that's going to work out for them. I think it's obvious that both teams, like Fnatic and Godsend, have so much shit to figure out that they didn't probably even count on, that they were expecting things to go much smoother than they are, and at the moment both teams are looking a little bit lost.
Okay, actually, I take it back. If they ever announce that Lecro's taken over in-game leading, I will hold a public funeral for Fnatic. I will attend it, I will film myself, I will attend it in a suit, and I will like lower a Fnatic like logo into the ground as like a sad song plays. Definitely not going to do that, mate. I've told you before, you're not going to have a roper on my neck, Ross. Anyway, I'm not going to go further with that analogy, but you'll never catch a roper on my neck. So.
Yeah. Why not? You do it here.
Okay. Okay, and scene. So here's the last question then. Is there any hope for Fnatic, Yanko?
I think there is. Because when you look at the team, you see a lot of talent, and you know that they can play against the best. I think for them, it's just figuring out who the fuck is going to in-game lead and dedicate himself towards that. I mean, it doesn't have to be as big of a problem if you just work a lot with Jumpy, right? And Jumpy kind of trains that person. But the biggest problem is that person needs to be willing to do it. He needs to be willing to sacrifice a portion of his like individual play to focus more on the team itself. Now, you look at the team, the obvious choice is Venton. So I'm not sure if like he doesn't want to do it, or maybe the other players don't like it if it goes that way. But we're seeing good signs from them. I mean, in the play. Maybe the reason why we don't think they're as bad as Godsend is because they played in way less tournaments and qualifiers. You know,
Could be, yeah.
So time will tell.
Does anyone attribute Olaf's lack of production lately as his injury, or just some kind of confusion with this lineup that it's not clicking well, or he's not playing well?
I think the one of the reasons why Olaf was playing like so well and was the best player in the world at the time was because he had fucking amazing teammates around him who knew.
No, Janko, I'll stop you there again. On that A-League show, Moses told me that Olaf Meister made those guys better. He made his teammates better, unlike Nico, who can't do that. And I made, obviously, the counter was...
You don't have a good grasp.
He's going ham. He's going ham. Come on.
You don't have a grasp of that concept.
Teach, sir. Teach, master. I am but your humble servant. I sit before you, Zen monk. Teach me.
When you have a team like...
Come on, teach.
When you have a team like that, the players all, because they're comfortable and they know how they're all going to play, they all make each other better. That's how it works in a team, because you are within that framework of a system that you're playing in. The things that you do help your other teammates, help your other players make the plays and get those situations that they like to be in, that they want to succeed in, that are good for them. And it works both ways. It goes back and forth.
Let me put it this way, like the reason why Olaf was so efficient and he could go for those crazy plays, ballsy plays at times and everything and trying to make space by himself is because he knew that whatever happens, even if he just dies or let's just say worst case, he gets only one kill and dies, that his teammates will know what that means for where they are on the map and they will make the best decision to work off of that. And I don't think he has the same type of confidence right now, perhaps in his team, which is, normal, seeing as how they brought a couple of inexperienced players in the lineup. So that obviously means he probably can't approach with the same style, or at least if he does that, it's not as effective as it was in the old team.
And for inexperienced players, that's the key thing. That's what they have to learn the most, is that kind of game sense, is to kind of understand how you make your plays and how you do the things you like to do as an individual in relation to what's going on for your whole team across the map.
Because I can see this, a situation where he gets frustrated by it because he does something on the map, let's say, gets an opening kill but dies immediately, and there is an opening for some of his teammates, let's say, Lecro, but he doesn't take it because he doesn't see it as well, and then Olaf Meister gets frustrated because if his teammate doesn't follow up, then it looks silly what he did, right? He got a kill but he died, and his team is now in an unfavorable position, whatever. So I think that's something that Fnatic will have to work on the most, seeing as how if Twist has the same approach as Dennis and they want to go for this looser play style, well, it's dependent on that game sense, really.
I also think that unfortunately Olaf Meister's injury came at a really bad time in his career, because his style of play as he got the injury was like, you can't do that style unless you have insanely high skill and game impact, right? Because the whole point of that style of play was he was playing super aggro. He was the playmaker in most maps. He was the guy where on both sides of the game he had the green light, you notice that had really transferred in JW. He didn't just do all that crazy shit anymore. Yep. So the problem is, if you don't have the skill to pull that off, you have to transition to a different style of play. And that's the part that I can't see. There's a good example in CS history, right, where the player Zet, the Swedish player who played for NiP back in 2006, was here's the key thing. I always tell people this analogy, okay? He was Forest before Forest was Forest. As in, Forest became God mode in 2007. Well, in 2006, the best Swedish player, and actually arguably the best player in the world, was Zet. He was this insanely aggressive, amazing rifler, super good with pistols, and so he literally was a super sick impact player. And the problem is, he went off to Source to play in CGS with Complexity, right? And when he came back to 1.6 was in 2008, and this was a couple of years later, and he came back and he joined up with SK, which was a bunch of his old NiP teammates, and he started trying to play again. And first of all, he tried to play his old style, and it didn't work at all. His skill level didn't work, and so his style was a train wreck. He was actually a bad player. Eventually, he tried to transition to just becoming an okay player on the team who does a bit of everything, tries to just be a teammate. And as a result, at that point in time, it's well, why even have him in the team anymore? You're only really having that guy to be who he is. The problem I see for Olaf Meister is, at the moment, if he wants to, he can just be a good team player in this team. He could be a middling player, and he could let Twist and fucking Dennis be the superstars, right? Because at the moment, Dennis is the best player in that team. So he could let those guys be the stars, but he has to actually mentally accept that if he's going to do that. If he still thinks he can be the old Olaf Meister, then the team has to be built around him again. So that's the problem I see with their identity. I still don't think they've figured out how is this team going to run. As you're saying here, each of the in-game leaders has a different philosophy even.
Yeah. They're in a tough spot. I think they're very similar to actually what FaZe is going through, where they have players who just don't have like the same, who have like this massive role confusion in how this team is even supposed to operate. Who's going to be the stars? Who's going to be the one stepping up? Especially with Olaf not having that huge impact. So I think they're in a very similar situation where they don't really have any kind of structure and they don't really have a blatant and obvious solution to that problem. So, I mean, they're in a scary spot, I think.
Yanko, since we started talking originally about the Astralis major spot, so the news that Astralis benched Carrigan, and then, I mean, it's not as we've said, the heavy rumor behind the scenes is that Glaive is the one coming in, because even if that wasn't just a rumor, which it is, it also makes sense for the major spot. Like, if you bench Carrigan, you essentially have to pick Glaive up. Like, you don't have a choice if you want to get that. No one, by the way, that's another thing to point out. No one is going to throw away a major spot. Like, that's the key thing. Because of the sticker money as well, everyone in the world is going to figure out a way. It's like their option is, we can only choose between the people who keep us the major spot. They're not going to do a remake. Like, say tomorrow they could strip everyone from Dignitas and Heroic and make like the God team, but it wouldn't have the major spot. They wouldn't do it, I'm telling you right now. So bear in mind, Glaive's almost certainly coming in, right? If no other roster moves take place before the major, so Astralis just plays without Carrigan but with Glaive, and they use this lineup going forwards. What do you think of that? What would you think of that Astralis contrasted to whatever the problems were before? What do you think?
I think that would give them the possibility of being a top team again and like making the final stages of tournaments. Not because I think that Carrigan is a bad player or that his approach to the game is flawed. I think that his teammates lost faith in him and his like calls, pretty much. And when that happens, there's no like coming back from that. Pretty much, you have to make a roster change, because if you don't have confidence in your in-game leader, then even if he makes a good call, you're not gonna believe it, and you're gonna do it half-assed, and then it's not going to work, obviously, because you're playing against the best teams and the best players in the world. So at this point, after you had so many bad results and you already made a roster change, which is not the in-game leader, I think this is the only change you have left, pretty much. It's like when in a basket, like you said, like when okay, that was just one player, Marbury, but let's say 3 or 4 or 5 like star players are unhappy with the coach at that point. Well, then you have to change the coach.
I mean, it happened with the Cavaliers this year, the team that won. They essentially, some of the players didn't want their coach, so they just kicked him even though they were one of the best teams.
Importantly, LeBron didn't want him as a coach.
Pretty much, sure. That was the thing, and it's a fucking amazing coach. It was David Blatt, right? He was like winning everything in Europe and so on, a very respected coach. But yeah, I think that was the case. And with Glaive, I think for one, you are refreshed, and you have to we have to remember Glaive was the in-game leader of Western Wolves in like 2013. Obviously, a different time in the scene, but they were one of the first teams to challenge the 87-0 NiP. Like he was even back then in like that time tier 1 of CS. So he definitely knows how to play and how to call against these teams.
No, the funny thing is, I think the example you gave from the NBA is a good one, because I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard me make this point on desks and videos many times, but I always say when it comes to coaches, or in this case, in-game leaders in CS or sports, there's like 2 principles that exist. One is, as soon as the players lose faith in the coach, it doesn't matter if that's an amazing coach. Like, there's not really a way to go back from that, because the idea is they no longer think that guy's capable, and so they're not really going to do what he says at that point. So at that point, even if he was the best coach, you probably should change him, because first of all, they don't want him, and then even better for him, he should probably go somewhere else where they would listen to him. Like, it would help both parties. And the second principle, which directly comes from that, is a great example of this, the Cavaliers one that I brought up here, which is that when they start to lose faith in the coach like that, a typical thing the coach will do to try and keep his job is he'll think like, right, how can I compromise, right? Okay, what do you players want? Like, do you want me to let you do something here or do something here? And that's actually even worse, because at that point in time, it's true, you might have a short-term improvement where players are like more comfortable, but the problem is, ultimately, if you're the in-game leader or the coach, you're supposed to have like a cohesive philosophy. Like, this is how we're going to play, how I'm going to use you, and what I want to do. And it's like, if you're not going to let that guy do that and really give him a fair shake, you can't then like judge him when he then fails, because he's not getting to do his plan. So it's like, at this point in time, you add those 2 principles together. This is why, to me, it was obvious Carrigan had to go. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but earlier this year, I did a video that was basically about like, how do you fix Astralis? And one of my suggestions, which everyone laughed at the time, was like, remove Carrigan. And at the time I said, bring MSL in, because obviously Glaive wasn't in the picture at all then. I said, bring MSL in, because I know he's a real tactician. He'd have better players to work with now. And if people buy into his system, at least he'll have like a running shot at it, So what's funny is, is, in the end, like, it seems obvious to me that with so many systemic problems in Astralis, it's not about if Carrigan's a bad player. He just has to go at this point in time, you know. If the players don't want to play with him. And by the way, I hope this doesn't mean the end for Carrigan. I hope he does go to, like, I'd say for your heroic, just pick Carrigan right up then.
Sports.
Wouldn't that be a good one? Remember, he used to be in Mouse Sports, Yanko. That would even be a good call, I think. A real in-game leader. I think these, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's not that either party's shit, but it has to happen, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I agree.
I think this is just like a systemic problem with coaching. I mean, you bring that up. If a coach comes in and wants to change some of the rules and wants to say, no, I want you entering. I think you're better suited for it. I want to change up how you're playing. I want to change up your position on the map. Like, that's the power that coaches actually have in basketball and in football.
And they should have in CS, by the way. Yeah, you have to give them a fair crack, right?
By the org, because they have no way to punish players. This is the thing. They have no tools to be able to say, oh, you don't want to fucking listen to the coach. You're going to sit on the bench and we'll bring in a sixth player.
Yeah.
You can't do that, and then as soon as you do that, you piss off the players, and then the players are like, we're not going to listen to this coach, and then the coach is useless again. So coaching is still in a very, very weird spot, I think.
Moses, I'm not saying this just to wreck you, but like that's actually a perfect example of what I said about the fact that players do have mad power in orgs. Yeah. So in theory, remember, the org in theory could say to these players, I've got you under contract, you do what I say, this is your coach, play. But every time in CS that the players say, we don't want the coach always goes. And so, I'm not saying it like to what I mean there is like, even though in theory the org has like the conceit of power, to some degree players in CS have a massive amount of influence over that sort of shit, you know.
But this is where, did you see the Astralis announcement by like the actual press release where they said Zonic has chosen to bench Kerrigan?
I think that was just, here's the thing, Moses, this is the way this works, okay? What happens there is, rather than say, Device and Kirby and Zipnix have benched Kerrigan, what they do is they go, Zonic, come here, okay? Yes, sir? Now listen, you're obviously not doing anything in this team, but your job is to say that you've kicked Kerrigan, but why would I kick Kerrigan that? Your job is to say that you kick. Yes, you do want that salary, don't you? Well, yeah, of course I do. Good, go and do my bidding. Like, all I'm saying is,
yeah,
okay, you get the point. You get the point. Okay. Anyway, so what is the future for Astralis then? Like, can they actually be good again, Moses? You didn't answer that part. Because here's the thing: Moses is not a believer in Astralis. Like, you haven't been for a long time, right?
Yeah, no, I've been down on them for some time.
I think the only person believing in them is fucking Anders.
Moses is always going down on Astralis, of course. I mean, that Device is a good-looking guy.
Decent setup. Yeah,
by the way, I don't think Anders like legit believes that. I think Anders is mentally ill at this point in time. I think Anders is like, you know, when like some like a fucking guy from like Guns N' Roses or something has gone like, they've had too much cocaine and they've gone too far past the point of like excess, and they just start like their work starts to suffer, and you can tell mentally they're not all there, you know, and they're doing stuff like just having like small spider monkeys allowed on their personal jet that they carry around called like Micheletto, that you have to talk to that monkey instead of talking to them, and they just listen. Like, that sort of mania is where Anders is at in his career right now, and I don't know when it ends. Like, I think it's going to end in some dramatic like blow up, like maybe get Belushi'd or something. but I just feel like it's inevitable. But all I'm saying is, don't take the Astralis thing and examine that. Examine the mental processes of a man who would pick Astralis, and then he always does that mad little laugh after he does it, like, Astralis is going to win the major. It's like, you're mentally ill, mate. You have something actually wrong. And at this point, I feel like we need to call it an intervention or something. Like, we can't let this keep going on.
I don't see. I think Astralis is going to need bigger change than just bringing Glaive in. I don't think that's going to work in the end, because they still haven't solved the fucking choking issue. Like, that's been around forever. There's no sign that's going anywhere. You know, they just, what was that event they were just at where they just choked away a huge lead in the mat, and
to godsend of all people, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
WSG.
I mean, it's just unreal at this point how this is still happening. So I mean, that's not even an in-game leading system, because here's the thing, it's crazy about it. Whatever system Kerrigan has gotten them to the end of matches with leads, and they just can't close. So that, I don't think that's a leadership issue. If they're getting to the end,
all right,
like this, the tactics are designed, they're working properly.
This feels like some sort of speech, Shankel, that Moses has used before, but referring to his dick. Like, listen, there's nothing wrong with the dick. The dick's getting hard, and I'm fucking, just because I'm coming soon. Like, that's not the dick's fault. Like, you just can't close, okay? Like, can't finish properly. Like, the dick is absolutely fine. And you know what? The guy attached to it, he's a great guy. He knows what he's doing. He's got a lot of spunk.
What the fuck?
And
where did this even come
from? No, that had no relevance to anything, but the analogy sort of held. Love you though, Moses. Still mates. Still all mates.
By the way, lunch plans canceled with you today.
Okay.
No more lunch.
Okay, so because I made an implication that he's gay, he's now cancelled his lunch plans with me. Jesus Christ. Yanko, I don't even write these, mate. He's doing this to himself. Ironically, doing some stuff to himself is all he's going to be doing.
You make a joke that now just removes the entire point I was making, but the fact is it's the same thing. Like, this team is getting to the position where they should be winning these matches, and the fact that they're dropping the ball consistently over the course of now 2 years or so, like, this is not a leadership problem. This is like with the players, with the star players who aren't helping them cross the finish line. Yep. Like, that's the big issue with this team, and that's why I think that, you know, if I'm that team, I'm looking at guys like Device, Dupree, and Zipnix. I'm not looking at Kerrigan. I'm not looking at, you know, Cajun Fine, whatever. But, you know, you're looking at that core 3 players that have been involved in all the choking episodes for the past 2 years.
Plus, one roster move can make a big difference. So the key thing is, the problem for me with this is Glaive joining the team, that doesn't fix the team. What fixes the team is if Glaive somehow figures out how to change some of the roles around, so suddenly Kirby's like better, or suddenly Dupree comes back to form because he hasn't been very good for a while. So that's the key thing to me. It's what Glaive's impact can be. I don't think him as a player alone is going to do enough. Like, I think they'd probably have similar results if he just comes in and admittedly Kerrigan was pretty terrible fragging in the last few events, but I think it has to be like a change more than just Glaive. That's my prediction. Otherwise, I don't think they become top team.
In that team, there needs to be discipline. Like, whoever comes in as the in-game leader, the other players need to like listen to what he says and fucking obey, and not like second guess everything like a team leader says, or every call he makes, or the general style he wants the team to play. Because if you do that, you're definitely not going to achieve any success. If you like keep second guessing your in-game, like look at Cloud9 when they had Sean Gears and Semphis, right? You would have Sean calling, but then like Semphis were, oh, but let's just do this round. And it's like, oh, well, I guess like my job is not as important anymore. You know, that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I feel that it's also a matter of the other players changing their approach.
Okay.
For my money, if I'm Strauss, I would have looked at someone like Dupree. I think he's the one where I got it.
I think he's the kick I would put personally.
Yeah.
My problem with that, this is the one, by the way, I considered kicking Dupree in my video earlier this year, but the problem I always come back to is, like, we can't answer that, but the key question has always been, would like Device buy into that? Because the problem is, if you look at the history of their team, Device and Dupree, that was like the power combo. That was the get right Forest, like, you know, we will agree, our pact is we always stick together and we're the ones who kick the others, you know. That was the mentality. That's why Cajun B in the past has been kicked from those teams, and why Zipnix has been on the chopping block. But you've never, ever heard a rumour in the history of Counter-Strike until now that Dupree could even possibly be kicked. That was never even on the table. So that's the key thing to me, because obviously that essentially requires Device and the others to side against Dupree. So if it happens, it can happen. Like, personally, as an analyst, I'd be willing to explore that option, certainly. Because, like I say, if I'm going to steal Dignitas players, like, say I'm going to get, like, fucking Magic's Boy or something, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to put him in instead of Dupree, you know.
Well, I mean, if you're an Astralis fan at this point, I think you have to just hope and pray they bomb the majors so they don't have a legend spot, and then they can just, like, they can have some kind of, like, get some heroic players, try and get Valdi, try and get Glaive, if maybe they have him already at that point, but, you know, make some kind of sweeping changes where you get a lot of young talent that comes in and is, like, refreshing to this history of failure.
And by the way, remember when that Cajun B move happened, and we all said, this is actually a good move for both parties. It gives Cajun B a chance to reinvent itself. By the way, same thing applies here. If, like, Dupree or Zipnix, whoever gets kicked, wants to keep playing, great. There's these awesome Danish teams, mate, you can go and probably be amazing on, and maybe you fit into those teams better, and you have, like, a Cajun B type scenario where it's like, will you overtake Astralis? Hopefully none of these guys retire. Like, I hope they all just go to other teams, and we continue to have a great scene, you know. I think it'd help the whole Danish scene.
Yeah. I just don't see this team now. I think it's gotten to the point where you've tried so many different things. Brought in sports psychologists. You've changed. You know, brought Cajun B's out. Now Kerrigan's out. You've changed leader when Fetish was on the team a while back, or a long time ago at this point. And nothing's gotten you over that hump. You still have this legacy of failure, this legacy of underperformance at the end, at the finish line. So I think there really is something systemic in this team now that is just preventing them from being a good team.
I've got a question for you, okay? So there was an announcement that Renegades chose to go to the Asian Minor rather than Pro League Finals, right? That was the announcement that was made. Now, obviously the logic on their side, right, is they've got a very good chance of placing top 2 at the minor, which gets them to the major qualifier. If you somehow get into the major itself, you get the sticker money, you get the... I mean, if in their world, maybe they think things go super awesome, you get out of groups, blah, blah, blah. Like, essentially, choosing the minor is like choosing a parlay, okay? You think you're going to parlay the minor into the qualifier, into the major, into a top 8 spot. That's the dream. Whereas going to Pro League is like you go to the finals of a tournament now, but you have to do really well at this one tournament now. Now, what do you think about this choice? Because personally, I actually think they should have chosen to go to Pro League if they think they're a good team. Because I think if you're an underdog team, if you think you're good now, better to have one sick run now and maybe do super good at Pro League. Because I don't think that even if they get through the minor and get to the qualifier, I think it's unlikely they qualify from the qualifier because how tough that is. And then fuck doing anything in the major. Like, it's not going to happen, boys. You haven't done anything yet. So
you're wrong on this one, though.
Okay, explain why.
Because it's the major, it's the prestige of the event. That's the event. That's the world championship. That's the event that every player wants to be at. Like you.
But here's what
10 times out of 10 if you're a player.
That's the problem. That's not the choice, Moses. The choice isn't the major or this. The choice is
I understand.
An unlikely chance to make the major. Like, okay, think of this. Okay,
you choose the opportunity to go to the major.
Right, I get that. But imagine this scenario. Imagine this plays out. Okay, they go to the minor, and by the way, I'll just give them it right now. I reckon they can make it out of the minor into the qualifier. Now imagine they go to the qualifier, and either from a bad group or just bad play, they lose there. Now, if you have to look back and you go, we lost this qualifier and we didn't go to Pro League, now it looks bad, right? Now you maybe regret it.
No. As a player, you don't regret that.
You don't regret going out of the qualifier for the major?
No, because you're trying to qualify for the biggest Counter-Strike event, the most important Counter-Strike events of the year.
I agree with Jason, because when you're actually playing, you're not thinking like, okay, there's so many good teams, like it's highly unlikely we can make it. Like, let's focus on Pro League. We have a spot there. Let's try and place high and earn some money. Like, the opportunity to be at the major, no matter how unlikely it is, it's something that I don't think any player will like reject. You know, because what do you gain from Pro League, like placing high there at the finals? You gain like money, the higher you place, and of course you gain some prestige because there are sick teams at that event, and if you manage to beat some, that raises your like stock or whatever. But let's say that in some, let's put it this way, no matter how unlikely it is, let's say Renegades make the major, and on the other hand you have them winning Pro League. I think they would pick going to the major, then getting first place, or let's say top 4 to be at least a bit more realistic at Pro League, like any day, any time of the day.
I think if they went to Pro League and did well, like say they got top 4 and they see someone qualify that maybe like shouldn't have, or they think they're better, then they would have been like, man, we're fucking pussies, you know? Like why? I think that's the mindset as a player.
Right. Okay, I understand that logic of their rationale. Okay, but I'll say it this way from my perspective. I'm calling it that they get to the qualifier and they lose at the qualifier. So if it was me, I would choose that. Now they obviously won't choose that, but unfortunately, I'm calling that it ends up that it's actually kind of like doesn't really work out for them. They get to the qualifier and they just lose anyway, and therefore they're back into the minor system. By the way, actually, wait, it doesn't work like that, does it? Do you go back into the minor? Yeah, you do. That's right.
Yeah, you have to requalify.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I'm calling that they don't make the major. So it's not the end of the world, by the way. But I just don't think they make the major personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get the logic behind what you're saying with like you pick the one-off event, but players won't think like that. Players, the major is like that important event. It's like the CPLs of back in the day. You know, you would never ever pick anything over missing a CPL back then.
Okay, I've got a question for you. So there's been 2 roster moves in Gambit. They took out Space and they put in Hobbit, who by the way was like the best player on that Tengri team. And here's a key detail: he was actually a guy who obviously he's from Kazakhstan, so Mo and Adren already know him, and he's someone where like they know his history already. I think they even said he played with them at the end of 1.6 or something at that like last WCG and like next KZ or something. I'd have to look it up, but I know that they already thought he was good. And I remember when Tengri played online, I actually asked Adren like, you know, what can you tell me about their team? And he told me, oh, the Hobbit guy's the best player on that team by far. So that move coming in, like, I logically makes sense in that regard. And then the other move is they took out Hooch and they put in Zeus. What are your thoughts on Gambit now? Because obviously remember, Gambit, like I would normally not cover this news, right? Because it's not that interesting. But Gambit has a top 2, like a second pool seed for the majors. So they are an established team. So what do you think?
I think I think this team is now like much more interesting than before, because you look at it on paper. You have Zeus, obviously the storied in-game leader of Navi, even in 1.6, so someone who is obviously capable of leading the team and laying down a good foundation. You have a Dren, which I value very high as a player. He just seems like that solid type of a player, and he was the reason for me why Gambit made like the top 8 at the major with some really sick performances. Mo is a player that I think has been slowly, gradually getting better, not better, but more consistent in his like level of play as an opper. And I don't know, I haven't seen Hobbit play once, but from what I hear, he's like a young and up-and-coming player. So again, that's something that you'd like to have on the team. And then there's Dosha for me, it's just like a placeholder for the major spot pretty much, because I'm not really sure at this point what is it that he brings to the team, because he's supposed to be that superstar type of a player, right? He's supposed to be, you know, the fragger and everything, but he hasn't been that for really a long time now. So unless he can somehow turn around his game, for me, he is like the one member of the team for which I'm like, okay, there is a better player who can play in this spot instead of him.
He's also the oldest.
When I'm looking here actually at the HLTV.org stats, right, Hobbit actually played with Tengri at that recent CIS LAN that was called Adrenaline Cyber Open or some shit, and he actually had a map against Flipside, which was an OT, and then a map against Gambit where he actually dropped 30 frags against each. So presumably that's also what like impressed them and like made them wanting to get him into the team, you know.
I think this changes. I don't think it changes much now. I think it just kind of increases the ceiling of this team. I think it just kind of says, I mean, it's going to depend a lot, obviously, on how Hobbit develops as a player, because he's still, a little bit inexperienced. But now they have that leadership. Now this becomes a team where I can see, maybe by the time the major rolls around, they are going to be a little bit more. Usually Gambit's a team where you're like, yeah, they're gonna upset, a tier 1 team on a map here and there. That's about their limit. I think the limit is now can be raised by the time the major rolls around.
That's the thing, they don't give a fuck. They have like 3.5 months to only prepare for the major. Yeah. Like Gambit is notorious as a team who doesn't play in that many tournaments. I mean, they played at the majors, E-League, and that's like,
and then just CIS shit basically.
Yeah. That's like pretty much it. They don't give a fuck. So for them it's good, because they can, if this is the 5 this is the 5 they're going to play with at the major. Now they have 3.5 months to like iron shit out, and because they don't have as many officials, presumably like people won't really have much to study them, right? When the major comes along, they'll be a fucking enigma for their opponents, which is something that holds a lot of value these days, where you have official games all the time, and it's hard to keep stuff secret in terms of strategy.
And that's the thing as well. With the amount of tournaments and games, the teams that are going to be in their group may not necessarily have time to actually research them with the schedule that's going to be.
Well, and they won't be at any lands. It's not like you can look at the offline formats and get a good read, which is obviously the premium of what you want to be able to study. No, the key thing for me is that, like, I think the Hobbit change luckily isn't a problem, because like the guy who's replacing Space, I've made this joke before, but he was almost like an invisible player. He just did okay. Like he didn't do anything super duper. It was, like I can't see how that's like adding Sixer instead of Devil. I can't see how it could be worse, put it that way. It's just probably going to be the same or better. So it's worth a gamble. So the key thing for me is actually the Zeus change, because here's the thing. I will say this outright, okay? I mean, I've said this point before. I don't know where this rumor came from that Hooch is some like sick in-game leader. He's okay. He knows what he's doing. He's a guy who can run a team and he can do the basics. And as an individual player, he's just okay. He's not super good. He's not like the worst. He's just okay. He wasn't one of the better players in that team, put it that way. So replacing Hooch with Zeus in terms of skill is okay. Like I do think, by the way, Zeus was a pretty bad individual player in Na'Vi. In fact, I think he fucked his own career by letting Starix take over as the in-game leader coach. Because as soon as you do that, and you're a player who's not that good, but you were known as like a brain of the team, you've now essentially eliminated your purpose in the team. And it's like the MSL thing that you almost did earlier this year. You just put yourself on the chopping block when they next need to kill someone. So I think that Zeus, that's the big issue for me. As an individual player, I don't think he's going to bring much. I don't think he's that good at the moment. But I think the key difference is if he can actually make them tactically good. If he can bring a proper system, now Gambit gets interesting. Because they actually were a good example of a team that is only good for like that one best of one upset. And they will get it every now and then. It's like every 2 tournaments, they're going to do it. The problem is, they're not going to win big series over people, you know, like they're the team. Here's a great example, okay? So Yanko, there was a discussion I heard on Lurpus's podcast, I forget who it was with, where he made a point, which is a very good point, which is that part of the reason why we brought in the best of three decider is that we were sick of two people going home after only playing like a couple of maps in the majors, and we thought, well, let's make it fair. And he made the point that, in a way, he'd prefer it if the best of three was the winners match, because otherwise you get scenarios like Team Liquid at Columbus get first place by winning the two best of ones. Well, that's what Gambit did here. If Gambit doesn't win the two best of ones in that group, I think they don't get out. I think Dignitas or Astrals beats them in a best of three. So I think in that world, like actually, the old Gambit, I don't think had much potential personally. I thought they could get the odd upset, but that's it. I never had them ever doing anything good, put it that way. So now, yeah, they're a long way yet from showing us they can do this, but at least now I see, like, now they can be like a flip side, okay? Now they could actually compete with you in a series. Now they could maybe have legit performance. Now there's a system, you know. Before, they were just like a retirement home of old names and a couple of youngsters, and then they were just fucking around. It's like they were a team where it's weird. Almost what benefited them is the reason they could be an upset team is no one ever saw them play on LAN, and it's like they didn't give a fuck. Like, the best thing Dosia has going for him is he doesn't care. Like, Dosia does... You have to understand. It's like if you tried... Here's the concept, Moses. The reason why you will never be able to communicate with aliens or, like, a god or something like that, something that's outside of, like, human realm, is because we think in a human mind, okay? Even our language is structured to a human brain and the, like, 10 decimal system and all stuff. So the problem is, Dosia isn't from our species. He is a creature he's a mythical creature, like the Titans of old in the Greek days, or like a hero out of Warcraft 3. He's just this creature that exists somehow. I don't think he was even born. I think he just appeared one day in Russia, and they chained him, and they trained him how to talk a little bit, and then they put a cult in his hand, and then they kept trying to whip him to stop him from pressing the shift key, and eventually we're like, fuck it, just let him do it. And then he presses the shift key all the time. He walks around the map, he shoots people, he saves his gun 1v2, and that's Dosia. Now, that's it. That's Dosia. So that's good in as much as no one's going to stop him doing that. He's going to do it anyway. But it's also bad in as much as he's not going to stop doing that. So
I don't even remember what the fucking initial point you were trying to make was.
That before, they weren't a real team themselves even. They were just a team who fucked around and they were like, whatever. And in a way that can help you, but that only works if you're trying to be an underdog, you know. If you want to be a real team, it's funny, we always say this. In a mad way, part of the reason why Flipside never places like really high at any tournament is because Flipside does actually the worst thing you can do if you want to be an upset team, which is that you just play standard. And by playing standard, you will routinely lose to all the better teams who play the meta correctly as well, because they're a better team and they have better players. So what's funny is you're not going to get that many deep finishes, but the reason you're doing that is because you actually think you can be a top team. You're setting the foundation to be a top team doing that. So the idea is, if World Edit and Waylander all really did become like superstar players, Flipside would be in an awesome position to be like a top 8 team in the world. You know, they would actually be legit at that point in time. Their problem is they've got everything else set up and they're waiting for the star player to do something. So I think Gambit now, they're not quite at that level yet, but at least I think this is like a 1 or 2 steps towards becoming like a real top team, you know, having a chance to be one. Before, I never saw they had any chance personally. I thought they were kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, They're in a good spot for at least for the future, and I mean we'll just have to reassess it when they do the major qualifier. I think that's going to be their first big test. But yeah, for the moment, this looks like promising moves.
Okay, as the last topic, I've saved this as the last topic. Okay,
ooh, baby.
Because the thing is, Pro League is still far enough away that we could do that on another week. The last topic I want to talk about is that Inferno has got a new update. It's been reworked, and if you know the history of these things, that means it's almost certainly coming back in the map pool. The question just is when. So here's the question. What do you think of Inferno initially? Just Inferno the map, not if it replaced anything. What do you just think of it as a map? Like the old version, the new version, what do you think of it?
I think we desperately need it back. We desperately need it. I think it's one of the most... Obviously, the historic quality of this map is unmatched, and just the ability of it to be such a cool map. I thought there were minor issues to it with the last version that I would have liked, and it seems like this update has changed. I mean, at least certainly over towards Banana, it's really cleared out all the clutter, taken away those brackets and everything like that. But I think Inferno, this current map pool with NiP being so shit, no one wanting to play it, Cobble being shit. I think this current map pool we have is actually very boring just by changing Nuke for Inferno at the moment. I'm so sick of Cobble. I'm so sick of teams trying to play Nuke. I think that map needs to be reworked. So Inferno, I think, fixes a lot of issues, and I think that also stems. This is why a lot of teams have some issues in their map pool, because still no one wants to play Nuke. No one's comfortable on it.
I heard that you are really excited about Inferno though, because you want to see Epsilon play it. Is that true? Because
I feel like you're setting up
because
for
you're like a
something.
really big fan of Disco Inferno, right? And scene. And
What the
scene.
fuck even?
Disco
was that?
Dopplan Inferno.
No,
It's a song.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Listen, mate. Just because you haven't got a reference game on the level of mine, I can't expect you to keep up. You know, I've just got to blaze my
That
own
wasn't a
trail.
reference game. That was just a shit joke.
Listen, Moses, the line between shit jokes and reference game being incredibly on point, it's a blurry one. You know, you can't really. Who can say if a reference game is incredibly on point or not? So not all of them land, Moses.
No, but yeah, I'm definitely happy that it's gonna be coming back. I hope it's in the pool for the major. That's
I
my
mean,
dream.
it's not like I gave that joke top billing. It's not a pelican, Moses, and scene. Okay. It's the fact no one ever made a video of that. That is probably
I know,
the
that was
worst
one of
clip
those
ever.
Epic lines from E-League Season 1.
Okay. Yanko, what do you think of Inferno? Have you played it?
I just ran around on it a little bit. I haven't played like a proper 5v5 game on it yet, but from what I've seen, it's like it looks pretty cool. I like the changes that they've made to the map, especially on the A bomb side, that it's more open now. The big problem was that the CTs had so many angles to shoot you from, and you were like coming in late towards that bomb site. Pit was a big problem as well. Now it's
Yeah, but Makaleli's here now, so it's no problem. So
it seems to me that like it's easier for the T's to deal
I'm pretty
with
hungry,
that.
Moses. I'm pretty hungry, mate. Just keep going.
And also, yeah, that's why you just keep going, Jason.
Keep going,
Just
just keep going.
Pretend it didn't happen. Yeah, and also like the big change for me is the skybox as well. Like the fact that the CTs can't throw smokes, deep banana smokes early on in the round, makes it much easier for the T's to get that banana control.
I like
going
that.
early.
I hated that about Inferno. That's one of the few things I agreed with was bullshit. Especially because the worst thing is, that period in like mid 2015 where everyone had just learned how to copy the Fnatic smokes, and so as a result, every round had to go down to like 40 seconds before anyone could attack on banana.
I think the right now I'm seeing a universe where the Inferno can be a bit T-sided because it's much easier for the T's to get like relevant map control, which in turn will force the CTs to either spend their utility earlier on or like go for some more risky plays to counter that pretty much, right? So I'm interested to see when it actually gets into the pool how teams approach the map with all these changes, and I like how the map looks aesthetically as well. So I mean, I'm one of the probably the loudest guys on social media, like when we have like retarded patches and retarded updates, how it's shit, but this one was really good, so like props to the devs.
I will say it is very weird on Inferno, and this is just a visual complaint because I don't think it's actually going to change any. It definitely won't change any gameplay, but it's so weird that a bomb site not having like the canopy over it, because it's had one. It's had a roof in every version of Counter-Strike. So now I'm looking at it and I'm like, what the fuck is this site?
Also, did you guys like follow the fucking Reddit shit? Like the devs like memeing on Reddit and also like fucking adding the bells on T-Spawn, like the graffiti of the bells. They're just fucking trolling us at this point.
Why not?
Why not?
It's the best part is the trolling is actually getting them is winning them back favor. Everyone's like, oh yeah, this is funny. The devs, they care to interact. They care to have some fun.
They are one of us.
The funny thing is, when you take away those smokes and mollies that like everyone had learned, like I say, the timing unfortunately meant here's the thing, all the T side of Inferno became eventually is like establish mid control, walk up banana, and if you get really lucky, maybe you can bait an early smoke or molly out of the CTs, in which case you can maybe attack a little bit earlier. If you don't do that, we all know like the fucking timing of when they're all run out of all their utility and now you attack the site, right? That was so boring, and the stupid thing is, even with that in place, it's not like every team by the end was still dominating CT side. It actually become pretty even. And if you think about the teams historically who were the best on CT side of Inferno, it was actually not just from the map. They had some like other factors. So for example, Fnatic was the best because they had Pronax, who was super good at like making that CT rotation call. Like, okay, Olafmeister, come to the A site now. Crims will hold alone. Then you had Envious. Envious was literally like just winning fucking 1 million force buys all the time. That's like, and had some of the most skill. Then you had an NiP with Makalele. Makalele's whole job as an AWPer is to go to a different spot of the map every time and just take peak shots. So you never know where the AWPer is. And the last team I would list is Existence Titan, the one with Kenny Esco and Ham. And again, that moving an AWPer all around the map, just dominating on CT. So it's not like they just played default and won the whole game on CT side. So I actually think now that no smokes are there, I think now it can be totally open. Like this could be like a T-sided map. I totally think that's possible. As a result, I think that'll be really fun to watch.
And can we talk about just how awesome of Inferno the last match we saw, the last meaningful match on Inferno was the 5th map of the Pro League finals in London.
When that overrated Chox guy was just like shitting on everyone's face, like he's like, hello, best team in the world, open your mouth, I have gift. Oh, what? There's peanuts in here. What's that? Crunchy.
He did win that 1-on-4 in overtime, which was absolutely
Mate, he literally made the best team in the world like hide like fucking Jurassic Park. Like, if you don't move, he will not detect our movement. Help! If I can't see him, he can't see me. He's like looking into a wall. Please.
And I think that's when you talk about like best players or most impactful players in the world. That's like the best example for it. You force a team to play differently because you're the only guy left.
Like in every other world, Yanko, that team especially, like obviously a very good team play team. They do like crossfires, they peek out together, they just kill the guy, it's over. They definitely, think about it, it's actually impossible to win that round if they just all peek out at the same time. You can't just like spray transfer two guys or whatever, can you? Like,
well,
it's not going to happen.
He had to go hunt down the first guy, Banana, and still no one from SK fucking peeked. He had to like run from CT spawn connector to Banana, and then all the way back. Yeah, it was unreal. That was such a sick match. There's so many good Inferno matches when you think about it. Like, think about, what was it, Kinguin versus Envy and Cluj on Inferno that went into like 4-0, like the one match that were...
That was G2 at the time, but yeah, I know what you mean.
The thing is, that's why I think that the time changes that we had in the beginning of the year, I think that's what ruined Inferno and made it boring, because that gave you the opportunity to just wait out all the smokes and molotovs you were talking about, Duncan, while in the old time frame, you actually had to do something ST, because otherwise you literally wouldn't have enough time to get to the bomb site and plant the bomb.
And let's add in, that was one of the maps hit the worst by the fact that the bomb timer went up. So now you have forever to just fucking walk around, construction check every angle and go in the site. Before, the great thing about the B site, what I loved about it on that map, is like when you're the guy coming in as the CT to retake, you have to make educated guesses. You don't have time to walk everywhere on the map. You have to make a guess like, I'm going to go towards here, I'm going to go... In fact, it's actually the same on both sides, because obviously you can hide in the pit or in the grave. The idea of Inferno, what made it great in my opinion, is when you do the retake, the terrorist has to be very clever as to where he goes and makes his decision. But as the CT, you also can't walk. Like, if he hides in that house and you check that last, we all know you've lost the round at that point in time. Like, you know that feeling when you check everywhere, he's not there, and you start to go up the car to the house. You know you've lost the round already. It's so frustrating, right? Yeah. But that's gone when you have, like, 10 seconds more, whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah, I mean, because especially Inferno, because it has like the longer rotations time as well. Like you have to just run everywhere. Like, the rotations were the timing of rotations was so perfect on the old Inferno with the old timings, and now it got a little bit messed up. But yeah, so I mean, I think we're all just fucking pumped that it's coming back. I hope it's here for the major.
One last question though. Here's the obvious second question though. You ready? We're gonna start with Yanko here. What map should it replace?
The problem is, I think the most obvious choice and what's going to happen is Dust 2. But I personally would probably like either Nuke or Cobble to be the map that's still being tweaked, or at least not in the active duty pool, right? Because I think those maps are flawed structurally to an extent. Cobble, there has to be, I think, more openings for the CTs to be aggressive. And to make a play pretty much, while on Nuke, I think it still has a lot of problems, like even visual problems, and I dislike the fact that you can plant on top of the silo as well. Okay. I think teams are figuring it out more and more, so for me, it's more of a visual static problem than structural. Cobble, I think, structurally has some issues, so I would like one of the two.
Moses, wait a second. Yeah. Hold that thought a second. I've got a suggestion for you now. I want to see what you think of this. I think I can fix Cobblestone, and all it takes is one box. Are you ready? All you need is a box that lets one man self-boost himself in dropper as CT and go up. one man on his own. Because that way, terrorists can't super slow set up. You don't have to do a two-man boost still. And then if they hit the B site, you can always flank them super fast. So now it makes it really cat and mouse. Now you can't go to B as much. What do you think?
I mean, it certainly helps. It gives an option. I wouldn't personally care for that. Something needs to be done to make the A site.
I don't care for your face, but I still look at it every day. I still acknowledge it. I still give it credit for being on your body.
I give you credit. I said it'd be nice.
Okay. Be nice. Okay, fair enough. Okay, but then you said you didn't care for it. That was hurtful. Why don't you care for my ideas, Moses? Please support your colleagues. They are trying their hardest to make this game better.
So I guess that lunch is back on the table now.
Okay, I see how it is.
They spend way too much time
Okay.
on this, man.
What do you think then? What map would you remove, come Moses?
I do want to see. I want to see Cobbler move, but the biggest issue Here's the problem: is if it was in a vacuum, I would say Cobble. But because no teams are showing, there's only 2 teams that show any desire. 3, I guess. Echo Fox is in there if you want to count them, but why would you?
They're not a team,
2 teams.
so.
2 teams want to play Nuke.
2 professional teams. Yeah. Okay.
They want to play Nuke. So I mean, the obvious choice would be to take Nuke out because it's not a map that gets played at the major. It's just like a wasted map to have in the pool. But Valve is never going to remove that for the major because they just added it back in.
Yeah, unfortunately,
it's not gonna happen.
Here's the problem. Both of your suggestions in that sense are fucked because they'll never remove Dust 2 because it's just like the iconic map. Like, that's the problem. It almost feels like a waste of time mentioning Dust 2.
I don't think Dust 2 needs to be reworked. I don't know why everyone is so pumped for like Dust 2 being remade.
I think it's just not that good a map, mate. Like, I don't really have fun watching Dust 2. I don't like it.
I think it could use some tweaks, but like, why? I hope they don't fucking remake. That's why I wish they would just like maybe give it a facelift and keep it in the active pool while they do it.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay, so here's the thing. Very unlikely to remove Dust 2, and then even worse, we all know if you know how devs work in esports, then one thing they're not going to fucking do is remove something they think is good, like Nuke, that they just added to the game recently, and admit, like, we were totally wrong, what the fuck have we done? Oh, asterisk, maybe we ruined the last 6 months of Counter-Strike.
Well,
they're not going to do that.
That a bunch of like Gold Nova players fucking love playing Nuke. Like, it's the only map that they asked for in the matchmaking selection, so that's why they'll keep it in.
So unfortunately, I agree. Like, for me, unfortunately, Nuke is so bad that I think it makes it the automatic choice. Like, we have to try and remove Nuke. Like, the others, we can discuss the merits of, The problem is, there's almost no reason to keep Nuke. And the biggest problem I see with Nuke is, I don't even know how you rework it at this point in time. I can't even think of a good idea as to what you change, because the things they changed didn't make the map better. And as usual, I actually predicted this, by the way. The things they changed didn't end up actually, like, making what they wanted, like, make it multi-sided. Not really. A little bit, maybe.
The problem is, I think, like, the logic that a map needs to be side balanced to be good,
bullshit,
or to be
obviously,
competitive.
isn't it?
I think it's like, I don't think that stands. I think that's flawed because a map, it can still be an exciting and interesting map, even if it's CT-sided, like which Nuke obviously was, even the old version.
Well, I mean, Inferno's a great example, right? One famously CT-sided map, and everyone loves it pretty much.
I think the painful part of Nuke and how it was sided is that like 14-1s and 13-2s were like commonplace. I think you need like a CT-sided map at 11-4 is like the sweet spot. If you're gonna have a map that's so heavily CT-sided. You can't just give a team one round to work with in the second half. Like,
I agree, but I think on the old Nuke, I think it was up to the teams. I think teams weren't creative enough. I think 90% of the teams were stuck with that mindset that we have to go yard and then we'll go secret and wrap and everything. We didn't see innovative executes like we saw from VP at New York, right? We didn't see teams try to switch things up or try something new. Everyone was stuck in the same like mindset, right? I think that was the problem. I think the teams, yes, it's risky because you have to kind of go yard first so that the CTs put more people there. Then you can go for an upper execute or an upper rush, which is a risk. But that's how the map works. You need to make other opponents. So that's not as big of a risk as doing it blindly. You're trying to bait them into reacting to what you're doing.
I think the big issue too is I loved Nuke in like 1.6, but when you add Molotovs to the mix, like that just makes the entire like 3/4 of the map just impossible to traverse. Like you can't do fucking ramp room for a while. You can't do fucking upper executes really. If
it ruins the hut, obviously, if someone has a Molotov.
Yeah,
and no one's going to run through a Molotov.
The door is just fucked.
Yeah.
The only way to get through the Molotov is to drop a smoke on it, and then you're just running blind into a site. So the whole map at the moment is really, really flawed.
That's why you see people like buying a Mag 7 and all the nades instead of a like M4 and
They
armor.
just turn into a bank for the rest of their team. If they get 2 kills around with a shotgun, then it's like, yeah, I can drop M4s for days.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I think we've pretty much wrapped everything now. So, Yanko, you get the final word. Do you have anything you want to say? Someone you want to thank? Some shout outs or some shit?
Fucking hell. Like, thanks, guys, for having me. It's been fun, as always, talking to you.
All right. Right. That's it. End of the episode. Goodbye.